Have about the critical issues of our day from a biblical worldview. We believe that to be right about issues, you're going to have to be biblical about issues. Check out Point of View every Monday from 4 to 6 p.m. and every Tuesday night from 8 to 8:30 right here on Right America Media Network at ramtv.live. Join us for the next episode of Point of View and let the Bible change your perspective.
Hi, America. My name is Savannah Lynn, and I'm the host of a political commentary podcast called The Savvy Truth. If you love God, love your family, and you love this country, you can tune in at Right America Media on Facebook or at ramtv.live. This podcast airs 7 Eastern and 6 Central.
Hi, my name is Jerry Serino, and I'm the host of Fide's podcast, new to Right America Media, going to be on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Please join me for all my great guests as we talk about conservative pro-life issues. I have great guests that I know you'll enjoy. I have Alveda King talking about her role in the new movie, soon to be released, Roe v. Wade, the movie. I also have Governor Scott Walker, the former governor of Wisconsin, as he talks about his new role with Young America's Foundation and the work they're doing on our college campuses and high school campuses all over the country. Join me for both of these great podcasts with these great guests, and along with many, many other guests that I have, in which we talk about the fight that we're in against the radical left in this country. Find me on any podcast app that's out there. Search under Fide's podcast. Fides is Latin for knowledge, faith, and truth. And that's what we do on this program. I dare you to listen.
I am a raging patriot. Welcome to KSok Uncensored. Today we are doing a special edition on addiction and recovery. Guests on my show today, my very own little sister, Kelsey, and her husband, my brother-in-law, Adam. I'm excited to bring them in shortly and we can talk through some of their life experiences. I want to start by talking about things that are happening here in Portland, Oregon. I recently put out a video on the fact that the Portland Police Bureau is bleeding out police officers. They only have 603 sworn officers at this time, and they have lost 115 to date since July of 2020. Unsafe amounts of police officers are now on the streets. They have too few to adequately police our streets. At the same time, shootings and homicides, they're up 2,000%. It was approved yesterday to refund the Portland Police Bureau, I believe, $6 million so that they can reinstate a gun violence team. The problem is the damage is already done. There was a gun violence team, a gang team. They've decided to change the name probably to be more PC. There was a gun violence team in place already, and they dismantled it when they defunded the police back in June of 2020. Now, 2,000% increase, and they've realized that they made a mistake and they are refunding. The problem is, like I said, the damage is done. And you know who is impacted the most? The African American community. When you look at the homicides, the statistics around them, that is primarily that community that has been negatively impacted. And the ages of these victims are so young, 14, 15, 16-year-olds. Also, the criminals, they're very young as well. We're finding that these homicides are being committed by young youth, very young youth. Something could have happened if resources were in place. At the same time, Portland has recently accepted a third party to come in and basically they're saying de-radicalize the Portland Police Bureau. They're going to be looking for, this is happening in California right now, and I did a video on it not too long ago. They are looking through all the existing police officers' social media, emails, communications, and they are looking for hate speech. The hate speech, as we all know, that is a slippery slope, and it is not long before being an outspoken conservative, Christian, and pro-lifer is going to be considered hate speech. Those deemed to be guilty of hate speech will lose their jobs. Anyone wanting to apply to be a police officer on the Portland Police Bureau will be declined. The other thing is, I posted a video yesterday. There are 31 exit statements made by recently departed Portland Police Bureau officers available for the public. I read them. I read about 24 of them yesterday, and they talk about, they're discussed with the city council. They're discussed with the mayor, who also serves as the police commissioner. They talk about the fact that the police chief is not strong and is not in the position for skill set. And they go on. These statements are powerful. And I want you to go check them out for yourselves. And actually, I highly suggest seeing if your local blue city that you live in has these made public to you as well, because there is a mass exodus of police officers, not only in Portland, but in many police departments in blue cities. This is a big issue. You are not going to be safe on the streets if there are not adequate policing available. Moving on, I would actually like to talk a little bit about our guests today. So like I said, my sister and my brother-in-law. Now this may be somewhat emotional. I seem to be generally emotionless, but we'll see what happens. My sister, obviously, we are the only two siblings in my family. So naturally, that's a special bond. We are 5 years apart. So growing up, we didn't have a lot in common. And I feel like that created just this underlying tension. We're very different and a big age gap. That said, I want to talk a little bit about what it was like when I realized that my sister was using. And it's one of those things where, someone like me, because I personally don't struggle with addiction, it's very difficult for me to wrap my head around why it's happening, why it can't be stopped. And I feel like a lot of people are like that and they just don't get it. And I'm completely guilty of it. Like, to me, it's like, why don't you just stop, right? But it's taken a lot of listening to be able to understand why things like this were happening and are happening. I am so proud of my sister. She did hit rock bottom, but she has been able to make it back to not only to the surface, but she is excelling in life. And all I wanted during these difficult years, and I would say it was about a decade of difficult years that she went through, and in turn the family, all I wanted was to be able to celebrate successes in her life. And though it came across as insensitive at times, that's ultimately what I wanted for her. I just wanted her to achieve in life and be happy. And so it is such a blessing today that I have my sister back. My parents have their daughter back, and she is not only back, but better than ever. And I'm not being cheesy. Like, she's amazing and just blowing me away every day with all of the work that she has put into herself and into recovery. Juan, I would like you to share this picture just for viewers, just so you know, this picture is a picture of the side by side of my sister growing up. She was like the cutest little blonde ever, still is. And that is rock bottom, I would say. And we will talk more about that. It's difficult to see, but when you see her today, it's going to put a smile on your face. So if we could go ahead and bring Kelsey and my brother-in-law Adam in, that would be amazing. Hey guys.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey. You can see just by looking at her, she's doing amazing. And I know, Kelsey, I asked for your permission yesterday before before sharing that image, because obviously it's sensitive and it's very personal. But as we discussed, I do feel like sometimes, hey Gordy, I do feel like sometimes it is important for people to see that someone can achieve success like you have from that point, from that low. And just really, really proud of you. Kelsey,
Thank you.
We talked yesterday. I'm going to give it to you. I'd love to hear your story. I would love for you to share your walk with the audience here. And just so you know, guys, as you can see, anything you say, your comments, for the most part, unless they're inappropriate, will pop up on the screen, and we are happy to do Q&A towards the end for sure. Take it away, Kels.
Well, hi, everyone. I just want to say thank you, first of all, to my sister for allowing us the opportunity to come in here and share a story today. You know, I'm very emotional already just hearing you say, you know, those things that you said, knowing where we've been and where we are now. It really is an amazing transformation. And so I could not be more blessed with this opportunity to be on here today to share my story with you guys. So I guess I'll just kind of talk about you know, what it used to be like, what happened and what it's like now. You know, we are both involved in the recovery community in Vancouver, Washington. It's an amazing recovery community. For those of you that don't know, if there's anyone living in the area that struggles with addiction or is looking for some support, there is so much in this community. So it's amazing. You know, growing up, I had a good life. You know, we grew up in a great neighborhood with lots of kids our age. You know, my parents were together. I had lots of friends, but I always just felt like I was different than anyone else. You know, I just felt like there was something missing. I felt like I was on the outside looking in, and I don't really know. I don't really know why that was. I just know that I felt that. Birthday for me and the whole family, and my mom brought the cake out and everyone started clapping and singing happy birthday. And I remember I sank in my seat and I felt like embarrassed, you know, like most kids would love that moment, you know, to be the center of attention and all that. But I remember just feeling like insecure and embarrassed, and I was only 5. So, you know, that's one of the memories that stands out to me. But, you know, growing up, it just, I just felt that way for a really long time until I got to high school. And, you know, I learned that I could fit in a little bit better with the misfit kids and the kids that had, you know, kind of just had each other, did their own thing, didn't really belong to any certain clique or group. I just fit in there, you know, and I also found drugs and alcohol at that time. And, you know, when I found those things, I felt like immediately like I was smarter, taller, prettier, funnier. I cared less about what people thought about me. My insecurities were gone. I felt like I found a solution to my problems, you know, and I also learned very quickly that just by smoking weed with someone else. I mean, any of you that have ever done that or been in that crowd know that you don't really have to make friends by getting to know one another. But if you share that commonality, you can just say, hey, do you want to get high? And usually they're game, and you don't really have to go deeper than that. So I learned I didn't have to really share a whole lot about myself to make those friends. It was just like an instantaneous thing. And I really liked that. You know, obviously, I won't spend a whole lot of time digging into the real nitty gritty stuff, but you know, alcohol and marijuana led to me wanting to try other drugs. I just kept wanting more and more and more, kept trying to get that, that next fix, that next high, that next excitement, you know, and eventually that led me through countless, just misery, basically, just endless, countless, you know, friendships, relationships, just pain and misery, you know, and eventually that led me to my, what became later my drugs of choice, which was heroin and meth. 2 things that I thought I would never do ever in life. I never wanted to do, had no desire to do them. And actually, I kind of prided myself on the fact that I had never done those drugs. But, just one thing led to another, and I did end up there, and once I ended up there, that was the downward spiral. It took just a couple of years for me to completely drive my entire life into the ground. And, I stopped trying to hide the fact that I maybe had a drug problem. I stopped caring what others thought. It was completely like I had come to terms with the fact that I was a junkie is what I thought of myself, and that I was going to be that way forever. I was going to die that way. And I was just accepting that. I thought I was never going to amount to anything, that I was never going to dig myself out of the hole that I dug myself. I had already burned all my bridges. I had destroyed my family. I mean, just so much, and on the inside, I felt completely empty. I felt like a shell of a human being. I had, man, it's emotional thinking about it. I hated who I was when I looked in the mirror. I hated everyone else. I blamed my problems on everyone else. I was constantly searching for, something to fill that void and that pain that I felt inside. And if any of you have struggled with addiction, there's that feeling of powerlessness. There were many times where I really wanted to stop and I just could not stop. I couldn't stop. I would swear it off at the end of the night, and that tomorrow I'm never going to touch drugs or alcohol again. The next day is going to be a new day, the start of my new life. And I'd wake up the next morning and I would get high. It was like I couldn't stop. And, those the heroin and the meth turned me to committing crimes. I started committing crimes to be able to pay for my drugs, and that led me to get into the system. And that again, wasn't enough for me to stop. All these moments of being told by the courts or being told by the judge, like they're giving me consequences. And I just still, for whatever reason, I just wasn't ready. And I was trying to escape my problems, and, it just didn't work out. So eventually, I kept going down the road I was going down, and I ended up getting sentenced to some time in prison. And I did do just under 2 years in the women's prison system. And, I felt like that was my moment of clarity when I was, when I was sitting in the back of the cop car for that very last time. It was like I just felt like I believe that it was God, or what we call in recovery our higher power. I believe that was a divine intervention for me. That was a moment of clarity where I gave up. I stopped fighting it. And I just knew that this was it, and because obviously me trying on my own to get out of that situation for as long as I had was not working. And so I was removed, I believe by God, removed from the situation that I was in and placed somewhere where I had time to get clean, get clear-headed, get my mind back on track, and have a consequence that I couldn't talk my way out of or try to get out of, So I had time to really think about where my life was and where it was going, and what I wanted to do next. And at that moment, I didn't know what I wanted my future to be like. I just knew I wanted to stop drinking and using. And, I spent some time there. The judge was kind enough and gracious enough to give me the opportunity of doing programs while I was there, which means I could do treatment for the last 6 months that I was there. It was the hardest, but the biggest blessing that I could have ever gotten, being able to not only have time while I was there to, have the consequence of being incarcerated, but to finish it off with 6 months of an intensive treatment center. And I needed that. And so I was given the opportunity to learn about some tools to stay clean and sober for when I got out. And simultaneously, right before, I forgot to mention, I'm sorry, sitting right here, but right before I was incarcerated, me and Adam had started spending time together. And so we were only dating a couple of months before I went off to prison. And, the entire time I was there, he came to visit me twice a week, every week for the entire time I was there. He was a very good support to me while I was there, which a lot of the women that are in there do not have that, or have it for a little bit and then those people disappear. So I was very, very lucky that our paths aligned to where he was able to and willing to be by my side through that time. But so while I was there and I was in treatment, Adam had found a recovery group. I just, for anonymity, I don't want to say what home group or which fellowship we belong to, but we do belong to a 12-step fellowship. And he did find that a home group there, and he was starting to learn about what it meant to live in recovery as well, while I was learning tools in the program when I was incarcerated. And we could, when he would come to visit, we could see the lights coming on in each other's eyes. Some of the things I was learning in group were the things that he was learning in in his fellowship. And he, while I was there, asked some of the women to reach out to me and write me while I was there, and they did. And I started getting letters from women that I didn't know, that I had never met, women that were mothers, wives, sisters, daughters. They were hardworking. They were living these amazing lives, and they were taking time out of their life to write me, and they had never met me before, and they were sharing their experience, strength, and hope with me, and letting me know that, hey, we've been where you were and we're not there anymore, and you don't have to be there again. And it was the first time in my life where I felt a part of something. No one that I was running with or was friends with before I was incarcerated wrote me while I was there, and these women that didn't even know me were willing to take the time to do that for me, and that basically set the tone for me for the rest of my journey. Up until this point, I got out of treatment and got out of prison and hit the ground running. I asked one of those women to be my sponsor, and she put me to work and got me busy working the steps and reaching out to the women and going to meetings and just staying busy, and my first meeting that I went to at our home group was Adam's 1-year birthday meeting, and what a celebration that was. There was over 100 people there celebrating his victory of over a year being clean and sober, and I had never experienced something like it in my entire life. And when we talk about a spiritual experience, that was it for me. I get emotional thinking about it. It was absolutely beautiful. I heard people that were just like me sharing these messages and shouting victory at the top of their lungs. I mean, we do things a little different in our home group. It was a very, very intense, emotional, and amazing experience. And I knew at that moment that I was home. I knew that my life was forever changed. And so I just hit the ground running, and I've just continued to be a part of that fellowship and dive in and get uncomfortable. And, I have sponsees of my own now. I work with my sponsor. We got married in September. We bought a house. We're a part of each other's lives and our families' lives. We have real, true friends, and we have a solution today, in our fellowship. We found that solution that we don't ever have to drink and use again, no matter what. And no matter what curveballs life throws at us, we're not alone, and we don't have to pick up ever again to get through those moments, because we have the support and the tools that we need. And if any of you are struggling out there, there is a solution, and just stick with it. It's life is so beautiful, and I wouldn't want anyone to miss out on this opportunity. Thank you for listening to me.
Yeah, that was amazing, seriously. And I did tear up a few times, just so you know. I'm like, you're really good. You really I just appreciate you being so vulnerable and willing to share that. A few things came to mind, and I'm just curious, because as you know, really, while you were going through your addiction, I know it's a journey, but while you're really in the heat of it, Dad and I would get in just knockdown dragouts because I thought he was enabling you. And I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on, because I feel like quite often when there is someone with an addiction, there is someone enabling them. What are your thoughts on, or words of advice to someone? Like, do you feel like helped you? Do you feel like that truly put you at a disadvantage on getting on the right track? What are your thoughts on, say, how Dad approached the situation?
Honestly, looking back on it, I feel absolutely horrible, and I've made several amends to Dad for that, because I know that he was just wanting to save me and help me. I mean, who wants to see their child suffering that way? And you just want to fix, you know what I mean? We just want to fix the people that we love. But I say this, and I've had to learn this saying a lot in recovery, is that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. You know what I mean? Like if I wasn't willing, nothing that Dad could have done would have gotten me to be clean and sober. I had to be ready on my own. I had to hit that rock bottom. I had to go through what I went through to be able to get where I'm at. I mean, period. You know what I mean?
Right. That's
like
really.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. You had cut out for a minute, and I thought that you were done. No, I was just gonna say, honestly, it is something where I had to put, as my daughter gets older, obviously your niece, I'm just not going to say her name, but as she gets older, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I totally see why he did that. Like, who wants to see their child homeless or hurting like that? So I feel like I have had more grace with him over the years on how he responded, and I get it more. But yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, while you're in it, I'm like, why you have to let her hit rock bottom? But it's just so difficult. It's easy to say that when you're not the one in it, like he was with you. But I mean, just thank God you are where you are today. And there were a few other things. I'm just curious, what would you say? Oh, that's cool. You see the comment here. This is what social media should be used for: people sharing their stories while others can listen and relate and communicate. I love that. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. And that's okay. So I just want to interject real quick here. I love that, because yes, my platform is political and current event based, but I was talking to Juan, our producer, and I was like, you know what, how would you feel about me going off script a little bit? And he's like, do it. Absolutely. Like, whatever resonates with people. That's what we want to be, is a platform for the people. And so I think it's so cool to be able to do a special like this and talk about something that may be taboo for some, but for me, it's like, come on, it's like real life. And it's so cool. What was that?
It's happening more than ever in the world right now. I feel like recovery is the addiction is the pandemic, and recovery is a solution.
Yes. I completely agree. That was one of my questions for you guys. And Adam, I want to hear your story too. But one of my questions for you guys was, do you feel like with everything that happened with the COVID pandemic, do you feel like that has drastically negatively impacted those with addiction during the recovery process? Sorry, go ahead.
It absolutely has. Yeah. I mean, we've seen over the last year or more, or whatever it's been now, we've seen, people come and go a lot. But I think that has increased by a good majority in this year or whatever. People are losing their faith or hope or whatever it is, and running back to the bag or the bottle, and it's easy to do, and it's kind of the easy way out, you know what I mean? And sometimes people just aren't willing to do what it takes to continue to live this life. And it's sad and it sucks. But that's the reality of the situation, no matter whether we're in a worldwide, pandemic or not.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I wanted to jump back on something, because so I know you guys started dating. Juan, can you show the picture where it's Kelsey and Adam many moons ago, and then Kelsey and Adam on their wedding day? I think we named it Image 2. So Kelsey and Adam have been friends since high school, and Adam was like a little brother to me. So it's really cool that they ended up going from friends in high school to getting married just this last September. I think it's such a cool story. But when, Adam and Kelsey, so when I say they started dating, they had known each other in high school, et cetera. And probably, I think they had something for each other in high school. But the fact that you, Adam, it meant so much to my whole family. One, when we did find out that anytime that we knew, Kelsey, that you had gone to jail, prison, whatnot, I could see, like, it was like, it's as sad as it is on one hand, it's like we knew you were safe. For the most part, right? We knew you were safe in somewhere. I don't know. I've never been, so I don't know exactly how safe it is there. But anyways, we knew where you were. Let's just say that. And then Adam, to this last time, Kelsey, the last time, and I know there won't be another. When I feel like you had the book thrown at you in a sense, and I do think that was probably the right move. And like you said, what saved you in a sense, but. It was interesting because Adam, you and I had met for lunch, and you were talking to me about the fact that you guys had started dating, and you were visiting Kelsey like twice a week from the get-go, twice a week. And it's actually quite remote here in Oregon. It's far from you. And I was just blown away by your dedication to my sister so early on. And I know my parents were as well. And it just meant so much to us. And I know it meant so much to Kelsey. And that's so awesome because like Kelsey said, not a lot of people have that consistency, that person you can rely on. And that person's that's going to stick around during the lowest of low times. Really amazing. And I know that's why you're married today. I mean, you're amazing. You're a stand-up guy, and thank God for you. Kelsey, I was reflecting on the first time I went to go visit you. And I'll be honest, like I felt really, it took me a while, like just to I was kind of like, this is like surreal, but I think Dad asked me to go with him, and I was like, oh, okay, let's do this. It's not like I didn't miss you. It was just weird. Like it was just surreal. Right. And I did kind of feel like I was envisioning what everyone waiting to get in was going to look like. And though there were a few of those there, there were also a lot of people that just looked like me, Mom, Dad, like just like, middle class. And it kind of breaks some of that, just the unknown. Like I was just assuming everyone's going to be dragging her. I don't know. I envisioned just crusty folks in line. And I'm like trying to remain as professional as possible. But yeah, I was envisioning some, let's just say, difficult individuals.
What kind of cleans up or filters out some of what you're thinking is that you can't have charges to be on active probation to visit someone in prison. So that cleared a lot of those. So
that makes total sense.
Sorry.
Yeah. Hey, got enough water there? It's like the size of your torso.
Gallon a day. It's like a novelty.
Oh my God.
That's amazing. All the riffraff's already at the prison. They're just inside of it, Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, that makes a lot more sense now. I didn't know. It was a pretty relatively normal crowd. And I remember going in, and do you recall the first conversation we had?
Yeah,
what I was asking.
So she leans in and she goes, so tell me their story. What's going on? What's up with them? She wanted to know the dirt.
I wanted to know what these people were in for, because you look around and I'm like, oh, she looks cute. Like, what's her deal? Like, you know what I mean? It's just interesting. Oh, she's a stalker. Or yeah, she stalked her boyfriend after one date. So it was really interesting. Yeah. But also I think that the reason I was asking you those questions also is because it took me a few visits to be able to go there. I would say, as you know, like I kind of tuck my emotions. And so I wanted to keep it surface and like kind of fun, I guess. That was like my way of dealing with the reality of the situation. But kudos to you for playing along. I appreciated that. But Oh, goodness. Well, I would love to give you the floor, Adam. I would love to hear your story.
Okay. Well, yeah, I come from a good family. Like we do have a history of addiction and alcoholism in my family. My grandpa died an early death due to alcoholism. Lost a couple uncles along the way as well due to that. I've got an uncle still that is whatever he is. I don't know what you would call it, but he's not clean and sober, but he doesn't smoke crack anymore. So, anyways, yeah.
We love him.
I love that guy. But yeah, so it's in my family. I don't necessarily believe that it's a family issue, but it can be in the genetics. So grew up, my dad always taught me to be honest and have integrity and have character and do the next right thing. And I remember from a very young age feeling out of place and uncomfortable and like I wasn't loved, and I probably had more love than anybody else around me, honestly. And I just felt different, so from a young age, I started acting out to get attention and doing all of these things. And I was constantly in trouble at school. And, somewhere I think in between 7th and 8th grade or something, I started drinking and smoking weed and doing that stuff. And, that led me down a whole another road. It took me a couple of years to get there, but I ended up, a few years after that, using methamphetamine for the first time. And then, after that, it would pretty much all bets were off. It didn't matter what it was, I was doing it, and, I lived a really reckless, life, quite literally. I did all kinds of crazy stuff, wrecked a lot of cars and motorcycles and myself and other people. And it was crazy. Like it was a really crazy life. And I didn't know that we were going to end up here. It never, the thought of living a life like what I'm living right now never crossed my mind. I thought for sure I was going to be dead by the time I was 25, and that didn't work out. So I just kept living the life, all the time. My family's there, and several years ago, they kind of had an intervention for me, and I started going to treatment centers and been to jail a few times, not for any length of time or anything like that, but I lived the life. I was playing the game. And so I started doing the treatment center thing and in and out of those places. And started about that time going to different meetings, recovery meetings and stuff like that. And I just wasn't willing to really do anything different at that time in my life, and so my self-inflicted misery continued on for a bit longer, a few more years, and then Kelsey and I kind of came back in contact. What was that, about 5 years ago now?
The campaign right before Trump's campaign.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was about 5 years ago now, and she ended up getting locked up, and I got clean for a minute because she kind of gave me an ultimatum, and she was sitting in prison telling me that I needed to get my life together, and so it was pretty bad, it was a little bit out of control or whatever, and yeah, I started back on the path towards recovery. It didn't it didn't stick right away. It took me another try after the ultimatum, and yeah, I've been doing it ever since then, and I know now that like it was love. I love Kelsey and your guys' family and all of that. But at the time it was just like, I just made a commitment, and it was like probably one of the only commitments in my life at that point in time that I like saw through to the end. And I'm really grateful that I did that. It was hell sometimes. It was not always easy. It was expensive. It was, it tested me in many different ways. But I learned a very valuable lesson from that, and it taught me a lot about life and making commitments and following through with commitments and being a man of my word and doing what I say I'm going to do when I say I'm going to do it. And that's what I do now. That's what I always do. That's the life I live today. And that wasn't always the case. I would tell you I was going to be somewhere and not show up on purpose, just because I wanted to make you feel bad or something, whatever it was, and I'm just not like that anymore. And I also learned from that experience that people don't get a lot of support that are locked up like that. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of cases where people are locked up and in prison or jail, and they don't have any support. And when they get out, they have no other option but to go right back to the life that they were living, and there's, many people are incarcerated due to drug offenses or drug related offenses and stuff like that. And alcohol too. I don't want to discount that because there's a lot of people in jail for doing dumb stuff when they're drunk and having the alcohol problem, which I do identify as an alcoholic and a drug addict, and people need support and they need programs and they need people like me and us to support them. I'm actually working with a guy right now, an old friend. I jumped online the other day and because I knew he was locked up and I found out where he was and I started writing him letters and we've been talking back and forth, and I found out that he hasn't had any support in like almost 3 years of being incarcerated in different states, and he hasn't had any support, and he's like super excited that I reached out to him and that I'm living this life, you know what I mean? But to get back to like my story and my recovery, now it's like, this is what I want to do. This is why I'm here. This is the fulfillment that I get out of life comes from recovery and doing the things that we do and helping people and just being able to be there for others, and that's not something that I ever thought that I would want to do either. And I get the most joy in my life when I can see the light come on in somebody else's eyes and see the changes start to happen in their lives and them doing things differently than they ever have before, and that's what I like to involve myself with. And yeah, it's a good life, man. And like Kelsey said, if there's anybody out there struggling, reach out and it's not, alcoholism used to be taboo, back when some of our literature was written that we read and that we live our lives by. Like alcoholism was like, people really frowned upon it and they thought you were weak and pathetic and all of these things. And that's not the case. I mean, anybody can be an alcoholic and you don't have to be genetically predisposed to be an alcoholic. You can drink yourself into alcoholism. And if that's happening, like you got to reach out, and there's places to call and places to go. And there's so many resources out there. We do need a lot more resources. But there's a lot of options that people can do to be able to reach out and get the help that they need. And there's people available to provide that help. And I'm just really grateful to be able to be one of those people. Yeah, freaking love my life today. And I love the life that we get to live together and with you guys. And yeah, it's fantastic.
Well, that you guys are so amazing. Again, thank you for being so brave. And I know that both of you, so Adam, are you sponsoring somebody right now?
Yeah,
Is that how
I
it
am.
works? Okay. And you're
Yep.
sponsoring somebody. And Kelsey, I know you are, right?
Yeah, I have 4 sponsees right now.
Sponsee. Okay. And that's amazing. And I know both of you, when we have family gatherings, you guys are on the phone often with either your sponsor or your sponsees. And I think it's so amazing. It's to say it's a lot of work. And this is just coming from someone who's witnessed it. Just by having you around. I mean, you guys put a lot of work into your recovery, and that is an understatement. And you should be really proud of yourselves. And I know that it's so cool to see just our family be able to be whole again, and just really amazing to continue to watch both of your progress. So just really exciting times. And I'm so happy that you had a chance to share your story on this show. I'd like to ask you guys, because we may have somebody listening, and I forgot my Q&A. We have like 6 minutes, so I'll go there. But for anyone listening that may know somebody who's struggling with addiction, do you have any quick guidance for them on how to direct the person struggling with addiction, how to handle that situation?
So I would, the first thing you can do is reach out. There's 12-step recovery anonymous type groups that can help. Like the last time I got clean and sober, I didn't go to treatment before. Now I don't necessarily recommend that for somebody that has not been to treatment, because there's a lot to be learned there. But
Aftercare.
But yeah, you can go to there's treatment centers all over the country, all over the place, and that's a really good place to start is treatment. And most treatments are 12-step based in some way. For the most part, they are. And then after treatment, there's meetings and aftercare and outpatient treatment programs. Maybe mental health counseling, stuff like that. There can be a whole different variety of things that can be done. But just finding a place to go is a good start, as far as treatment goes and things like that.
I would say also just getting them linked in with looking at local 12-step meetings that are available, but not. They have to be a little bit willing. So maybe pointing them in the right direction, and hopefully they can get in the center of the circle themselves and find someone to, work the steps with, or find a sponsor if that's the route that they end up going. It is hard being someone that is not, if you're not actively in addiction or have not ever been, and you're not, unsure what that's like, that can be a little bit hard to relate to the person. But being patient, but not enabling, trying to find that balance, that's very hard. There's also Al-Anon meetings. That's
something that I wanted to mention as well. And what that is it's a family group. You had mentioned being enabled by family members. I think probably a vast majority of addicts and alcoholics are. I know I was, as well as Kelsey, and there's groups out there for family members to learn how to say no and learn how to set healthy boundaries and all of those things. And that can be a really big help, because when an addict or alcoholic loses a resource, that feeds their addiction, they may be closer to recovery.
I know. Did you guys see it? There were a few comments that had popped up. It looks like we have someone watching who's going through this with their son right now. And looked like someone else who had gone, right. Yeah. I think that says Kurt. I could be wrong. it's so, man, it's so hard to see, because I know what mom and dad went through, and Adam, I know your parents as well. And there are no, yeah. And then a member of Anon. I know that mom went to, what is it, Al-Anon? I know she went to some of those meetings, and it really did help her. She felt like she connected with other mothers. And again, she thought the same thing that I thought when I went to visit you when you were incarcerated. She just expected it to be just people that were not like her whatsoever. And she was so wrong. She said there were so many people just like her that are going through this with their children. And I know it did help her try to wrap her head around what you were going through, what she's going through. And I know she told dad he should go because she was able to identify that he was enabling you. So it's where, I mean, look, I think we can all, of course, dad's in the other room hanging out with the kids, so he doesn't know.
My mom
But
is going on too. So
yeah. I mean, it's just it is what it is. And but so cool. It's so cool that you guys have been able to come this far. And I'm just curious, Kelsey, when you first got out, I know one of the things that really meant a lot to us to be able to help you out with, and mom, and you got out, we're like, let's go shopping, get you some new clothes, right? Because it's like, it's just something, it's like you want a new start. And there's so many women that don't get that. Like you said, they just don't have those resources. And so you come out with maybe what you went in with, and then are there resources, like instead of us donating our clothes to Goodwill, could we find local shelters that women that have just gotten out, and men, of course? I mean, do you know of things like that nationwide, or should we just look up a local one?
Specifically, so I don't know specific names that necessarily, but what I do know is like when I got out, I was in transitional housing, and this is in Oregon. Oregon does have quite a bit of resources, but when I got out, I was in transitional housing, or what they used to call like a halfway house, and a lot of the women there literally don't have anything, but they do have programs established within those housing places that give you like a voucher to Burlington Coat Factory, or they give you a voucher to Goodwill or whatever, to at least get a couple of outfits for when you first get out, you know what I mean? Which is great if you literally have nothing, or you need like interview clothes and stuff, but they could always use more and have more options, So I know like you even had given me a couple bags of clothing that I was able to share with some of the women there while I was there. And I know it meant a lot for them. So I can find out in more detail, but there are, I mean, you can look up places like that, but definitely as much as Goodwill can be great, if you know a place where you could personally donate and know that it's going to be used right away to people that can afford it, I think that would be really a great thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it made me feel good being able to, pay it forward in a sense. It's like, and knowing that Goodwill's for profit, I'm like, oh, I really don't want to give them my stuff. So it was a win-win, really. So no, that's awesome. There's so much that can be done. And I just think, I know you guys do, what do you take time and you feed homeless, right? Your or your group that you're a part of, you guys get out in the communities and help pay it forward in a sense. I think that's amazing.
Yeah. Our fellowship, obviously any of the fellowships really are service-based. So getting out in the community and doing service work, we say service work keeps you sober. So getting out of yourself and going to help others. So, our home group does go volunteer at the Portland Rescue Mission once a month and feeds the homeless. We do plenty of other things within the community to help out. But like I said, Vancouver has an amazing recovery community in the area. So, there's lots to be done, and always lots of service that can be done.
Yeah, there's more recovery housing in Vancouver than any other city in the state. So
wow, incredible.
And more meetings as well, as far as I know. So there's a lot of recovery stuff happening here.
Sounds like a good place to be. I would like to play, Kelsey, I have that video of you that you compiled. I wanted people to be able to see her, your funny side. You're very funny. And this is a little video that I found on your Instagram that I want to play for the viewers.
I do this thing every morning. I get my iced coffee and take my first sip. And I do that. Here it is. Yeah, that was a good one today. Yep. Yes. Yeah. It's my day off today. Can you tell? This is yesterday's makeup. Crusted on. I had to feel my way to my car keys this morning to come and get this.
Oh my gosh. Did you say you had to feel your way to your car keys?
Yeah. And that's
You
clean
are
and sober, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's just, I think it's hilarious. So do you actually like clench the fist each after you take your first sip?
Most of the time, I actually don't really. Today, I'm not gonna lie. I was gonna say I don't do Starbucks anymore, but I'm not gonna lie. I went there today, but I usually do Black Rock or Dutch. Yeah.
I know. I was so embarrassed when I got Starbucks, and then I know. I try not to support them too.
I try to avoid Amazon. It's just.
I love America too much for that.
Oh, by the way, show everyone your.
Yes, I make recovery great again. Oh my gosh, I love that. Seriously. You know what? I think when I roll out my my blue state conservative line, whenever that's going to be. Remember, Kelsey, you're going to be my business partner on that. But I feel like we need one of those shirts, Adam. That can be the Adam special. Wade called you a nerd. Mayor Wade of Fern, Iowa.
Oh,
all right.
Fern.
He's been watching the whole time. He's a big fan of yours.
Glad
all right, you guys. Thank you so much for being on. I love you both so much. And thank you for being real. And if you're open to it, I think this would be awesome to do again. And maybe we can throw Tracy in the mix because I think she's an amazing sponsor and just woman as a whole. So I think that would be great.
I'll talk with her about it.
Yeah.
Maybe Q&A next time.
Yes, yes, for sure. Yeah, we could like dedicate half the time to that for sure. That would be good. Well, thank you guys so much. And I'm gonna wrap it up, but I'll talk to you guys very soon.
All right. Love you.
Sounds good.
I love you too. Bye. Bye. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. As you can tell, this topic is very near and dear to my heart. That's my little sister. I only have one sibling, and she's doing so well. So it just puts a smile on my face. And you guys, she's a raging patriot, very conservative values. So let's not forget that. I know I wasn't going to be too political today, but got to throw that in there. So we have some exciting news. So RAM, Right America Media, RAM, RAM, we actually have a partnership now with MyPillow. So if you go and make a MyPillow purchase, you know, Mike Lindell, amazing patriot. If you make a purchase, there is a place where you can enter the code RAM, and then they will be able to see that you went and made that purchase because you were inspired by Right America Media. This helps us out as a channel. It gives us legitimacy, and we want to keep growing. And so if you could support MyPillow and RAM by doing that, that would be so appreciated. And again, I appreciate you tuning in for KSok Uncensored, the special edition, Addiction and Recovery with my sister and my brother-in-law. And please stay tuned for Keith. Have a great night.
Hey y'all, it's Savannah from The Savvy Truth with Right America Media. I'm just here to let all of y'all know that we are officially partnered with MyPillow. And so you know I'm telling the truth. Our discount code is RAM, capital R, capital A, capital M. So go use that code when you want to buy any of Mike Lindell's awesome sheets, awesome pillows, dog beds, towels, or whatever the heck you want to get. And our official MyPillow phone number is 800-867-0416. So please go use our code, go use our phone number, and go get some of Mike Lindell's awesome, all-American, made in America towels, sheets, dog beds, and pillows galore. So go check them out.
Hey, this is Josh Barnes with Point of View, where we discuss the crucial questions that you have about the critical issues of our day from a biblical worldview. We believe that to be right about issues, you're going to have to be biblical about issues. Check out Point of View every Monday from 4 to 6 p.m. and every Tuesday night from 8 to 8:30 right here on Right America Media Network at ramtv.live. Join us for the next episode of Point of View and let the Bible change your perspective.
Good evening and welcome to Here's My 2 Cents with me, your host, Keith 2 Cents Sanders. We got a lot to talk about tonight, a lot going on this past week, and we're going to delve right into it. We got a lot of good stuff to talk about. I've got some good news for you tonight. I have 2 good news stories. I'm going to give you one right up front. Last week I made you wait. And I teased you and I pulled that string and I made you stick around because I wanted you to hear all the good stuff that I had to talk about. We got some really, really good news, times 2, that I'm going to give you tonight, and we're going to start off with one of them. I'm not going to make you wait. I'm making you wait right now. I'm teasing you a little bit, but you know I have to do it. I have to do it a little bit. First one up, we're sponsored. We got a sponsorship from the MyPillow guy. MyPillow is sponsoring Ram TV. That's right. They sought us out. They said, we have a great product. You have a great product. We need to put this together. Some of this might be a little bit of a stretch. It might have been the other way. But anyway, where I come from, stories are 10% truth, and sometimes that story is the person's name. But here's what's absolutely true. This is real. I'm having a little fun with it. You can see I'm a little bit excited. MyPillow.com is sponsoring Ram TV, and we want to say thank you to the folks at MyPillow. Of course, Mike Lindell himself. We're really excited to be partnering with MyPillow, and here's what's really, really cool. This is how you know it's official. When you go to their website, we have a promo code. That's how cool we are. That's how real this is. We have a promo code, nice and easy, RAM. RAM. If you're a cool pilot type or a military type, Romeo Alpha Mike. Super easy, RAM. When you put your order in for the MyPillow or the sheets or the duvet cover or all the other great products, they actually sent us some of them. I'm sleeping with the MyPillow myself. I'm sleeping with the new sheets. They're great. I love them. When you go to mypillow.com, RAM, Romeo Alpha Mike, RAM, RAM. That's your promo code. We got a phone number for you to call. Get your pens out. 1-800-867-0416. Code RAM. When you put that order in, tell them RAM. We're the ones that sent you. You can tell how excited I am. Things are really starting to happen at ramtv.live. Good news story. Number 1, we are partnering with mypillow.com, Mike Lindell himself. I have some more news on Mike Lindell a little later on. Stick around for that. I mentioned we got a lot of really good things coming up for Ram TV. Let me tell you what we got coming up. We got Ram Radio. Our great producer, Juan, who's always behind the scenes doing all the great work for us here at ramtv.live at Right America Media. That's his brainchild. He's the one who put this all together. He seeks out great talent like your boy, 2 Cent. He finds great talent. He finds good people. He finds Christians. He finds conservatives. He finds those forgotten men and women who want to speak up. And that's what this site is all about. He's now expanding us out to Ram Radio. Stick around for that. When that comes up, we want you to come with us and we want you to listen to us over there. Take us everywhere you go. On Facebook, we were in timeout. We We said some things the overlords didn't like. We're out of timeout. We've learned our lesson. Mr. Zuckerberg, sir, we have learned our lesson. Here's what's really good about that. Our reach is getting back out there, and that's a good thing. I think we're a little over 8,000. I know we're small, but we're growing. We've set an aggressive goal to get to 10,000 followers. We're relying on you to share this with your friends. You know that mainstream media is not going to give you a conservative approach. We know that some of the outlets that generally may lean a little bit to the right, maybe they're not leaning so much to the right anymore. Maybe you're not seeing that other side of the coin. I want objective news too, folks. I do. However, in today's day and age, when everything you see, everything you pick up, everything you touch, everything you look at has a leftist point of view, there has to be the countervailing argument to be made. And fortunately, we're back up and running at Right America Media on Facebook. Now, your boy, that's the one you're here to see. That's the one that everyone's after. You can find me everywhere. Juan put this up for me across the bottom. You actually nailed it last week, by the way. I don't know if you got to see that. You did a great job. Thank you so much for that, buddy. At 2 Cent KSJ. At 2 Cent KSJ on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok, and on Parler. I've been told Parler's back up. I haven't had success with it yet. Let me know if you guys are following. Drop that in the comments. Let me know if you're finding me on YouTube. We're going to be getting our site revamped. Your boy 2 Cent's going to jump in on that one. We're going to make that beautiful. You're going to love it. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be great. Also, I'm letting a little bit out here a little bit early. Juan is working on an app. We're getting an app going. Don't tell him I told you. Things are coming. Things are building. And again, we got a sponsorship. Got to drop it one more time for you. MyPillow.com, promo code RAM. We have put all of this in place. We do all the hard work. We take all the time to put together a really good program for you and a really good product. And we reach out to the conservative companies and we reach out to the other conservative, I guess, platforms, or maybe those creators that are on those platforms, because deplatforming is still very, very real. That's why we're trying to move away from the legacy platforms of YouTube. If you were watching last week, take a quick step back. If you were watching last week, the biggest topic in the country I purposefully avoided, and it's the George Floyd case with Derek Chauvin, the former police officer from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I had to tell you then that I couldn't talk about it. And that's from a lesson learned on some of my social media. I have found that if I jump out there in the front, give my opinion on it, I may get shadow banned. And I wanted to stay away from that. And I wanted to stay away from that here. I wanted it to get out into the ether, let people talk about it. Let's see what is being allowed, what's not being allowed by the overlords. And then that way we can talk about it ourselves. We're going to talk about it a little bit more going forward. Now that we can see where we can be able to get in there, get our point of view in there, get the conservative point of view out there. So stick around for that. However, deplatforming is very real. That's why I'm bringing this up. We have to dance around this. You can have the left say the most horrible things, and I'm looking at you, Joy Reid, some of the awful, terrible things that you've said. I'm looking at you, Don Lemon, on CNN, the awful, terrible things that you've said. You could say whatever you like because you enjoy this thing called free speech, which should make its way over to social media platforms. And Justice Clarence Thomas actually put out an opinion recently. I don't have time for it tonight. I'll tease you on that one. He's got an opinion out there that's got conservatives excited because it may have far-reaching effects when it comes to the public sphere, which of course is now online. But I digress a little bit. Deplatforming is very real, but we're growing and we're doing everything we can over here to continue to get that conservative message out. With all of that being said, this past week, Georgia passes a voter security law. The world loses its ever-loving mind, including Major League Baseball. The border is still a mess. Fauci still makes no sense whatsoever. And I got a little bit more for you when it comes to the infrastructure bill. So here's my 2 cents on that's not pee on your leg, it's rain. And I'm serious. I'm serious. It is a nonstop barrage of I'm not peeing on your leg. That's just the rain. Go back a few weeks, actually a couple months, when Papa Joe first got into office, your boy 2 Cent was all over him because he was just signing things away. He was just signing all his hopes and dreams in. I said, where's Congress? I knew at the time I should be careful what I was wishing for. I absolutely knew at the time I should be careful. I knew once Congress came in, they were going to go crazy. And I felt it was going to be a neck-breaking speed. And unfortunately, I was right. I was hoping that it wouldn't be the case, but they know what they got. They know what they got. They have a scared population. They have a population that was force-fed, sources say, sources say, sources say, and if true, and if true, and if true, about one Donald J. Trump, number 45. They know they're coming out of a, and we're going to get into this a little bit more later, they're coming out of a false recession that has an unrealistic false climb. It's just getting us back to where we're supposed to be, by the way. I'm going to get into that more later. They're going to ride that. They're going to ride that fear. They're going to ride this unrealistic economy that's raising based off of a false recession. They're going to ride that to increase taxes, to push through everything that they've ever wanted through law. But folks, normally I wait till the end. I'm coming right out, right off the bat, 2022. I'm going to keep nailing this one. I will keep nailing this one down. 2022 is our time. We have to, and we can, and we will take back the House and take back the Senate. Right now, Democrats have a 50-50 in the Senate with a tiebreak of Kamala Harris. That means they essentially have the Senate when it comes to anything budget related. They can pass it with a 50-50. They just got another ruling from the parliamentarian, which basically says you could continue to put through anything that's budget related or deficit related, and you only need a 50-50. Other than that, you need a 2/3 majority. That way you can avoid the filibuster, which we've talked about in a previous episode. Go back and take a look. So with that 50-50, they're just going to pass everything they could ever possibly think of. And I'm going to get to more of this later, including the infrastructure bill, because they can. The House, every single person is going to be up for election in 2022. I'm going to keep hitting you guys about this. I want you to tell your friends about it. Normally, whoever's got the White House, this time it's a Democrat, normally they have a lower turnout in the midterm. 2022 is our time to strike, to take back the House, to take back the Senate, and that way we can have the checks and balances in place that are supposed to be there. You're not supposed to have a hive mind. And I'm going to keep saying this, and I may sound like a broken record, but I'm really trying to drill this home. We're not supposed to have a hive mind where everyone is on board to do the same thing. Back to being on my leg and telling me that it's raining. Mr. Transparency, Mr. Honesty, Mr. Integrity lies, and he lies, and he lies, and the media does nothing. They do absolutely nothing. They do the smallest bit of pushback. They do absolutely nothing, and they let it happen. Heck, some of them are perpetuating these lies, and we'll get into more of that later. I mean, you can't go on CNN right now without seeing a headline that says voting rights under attack. That is on their website. We talked about that last week. It's still there. It is still there. Voting rights are under attack. They're peeing on my leg and telling me that it's raining. You're getting lies from Papa Joe left and right, and you're getting lies from that lying liar, Jen Psaki, captain of the debate team, girl next door. Honestly, she needs to be on a dodgeball team. When you watch her talk, when you watch her field questions, it is dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge. Left, right, up, down, center. She contorts in ways that you wouldn't possibly imagine. She can deflect, she can switch, she can turn, she can put it right back on you. She can insult you and get away with it. It's amazing. It is absolutely amazing. This person talks and says nothing. This person will insult you and say that you weren't paying attention. This person is amazing. She should actually get a lot more credit for what she's doing. And of course, there's no pushback for it. There's no talking over her. There's no yelling at her. There's no crazy accusations. It's just yes or no questions, which she then finds a way to get around. But I really got to tell you, she's truly amazing. Let's get into the biggest thing she's been lying about, the biggest thing that Papa Joe has been lying about. Of course, it's the Georgia voting law that passed. I'm jumping right into it. Here's what actually... let's start off with the lies. We're going to start off with the lies, and then we're going to get into the reality of them. I'll break them all down, the biggest ones. If you're not following me, by the way, I hit this one on TikTok at 2CentKSJ. That one got about 40,000 views on it. I really should get over 100,000. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at all of you. I want over 100,000 on these. This one popped off because it's real and because people are feeling the same thing, and that's why I'm here. I'm to give that voice. Hey, I've been blessed. I look good. I sound good. I say things really well. We make jokes around here. I did this so that way people could see what's fact and what's fiction. Let's get into the lies here. Papa Joe at his press conference said they reduced in Florida the voting time to end at 5 p.m. Lie. It was from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Guess what? Still 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Here's a little more on top of that. If you're in line by 7 p.m., you get to vote. If you got there at 6:59 and there are 4,000 people in front of you, you get to vote. And then also part of this law, you shall be counted. How horrible is that? Sounds restrictive to me. Another lie they had, it reduces access to mail-in voting. Lie. It made permanent any excuse absentee voting. Any excuse. You don't have to have a pandemic. You don't have to have an approved excuse like you do in the president's home state of Delaware. I looked it up. It's not that hard. In the home state of Delaware for President Biden, you have to have an approved excuse to do mail-in early balloting. Not in Georgia. Sounds restrictive to me. Here's a big one that he's still pushing. And I have plenty of people on social media still pushing back saying you can't bring water to people waiting in line. First of all, bring your own water. Second of all, what it says when you read it, of course, this is a lie, any outside groups, those campaigning, people who walk up and say, courtesy of Joe Biden, courtesy of Donald J. Trump, and it's within 150 feet of the building. If you're 1,000 feet back and it's hot, people can bring you water. Guess what? People you know can bring you water. You can bring water. Here's another one. Restricts access to early voting. That's another one they like to perpetuate. That's a lie. It actually mandates 2 Saturdays, which is an increase from 1 Saturday. Sounds restrictive to me. Also, Sundays are now optional. That wasn't even a possible day before this bill. Sounds restrictive to me. And then here's the big one. This is what it all comes down to. It mandates voter ID for your mail-in ballot. Let's break this one out. First of all, you have to have an ID to register to vote. Oh, well, how can you get one, 2 cent? What if I don't have the money? They're free. State IDs are issued at taxpayer expense, which is to say free to you. If you can't afford to get an ID, you're most likely not paying taxes. You could get an ID, walk in, get an ID. By the way, like I already said, you had to have an ID to register. You have to have an ID to register. You can get the ID for free. You have to have an ID to vote in person. Why wouldn't you have an ID to vote via the mail? Let's ensure that your vote was counted. Okay, let's say you don't have that ID. Let's say you never went and got that ID. You can use the last 4 of your social security number. Just write it down. Just write it down. Oh, maybe I don't know the last 4 of my social security number. What else can I do? You can include a bill with your address on it. You can include a welfare check from the state with your address on it. Anything. Anything. It is to ensure your vote was counted and your vote was valid and someone else didn't vote in your stead for you already. How horrible. How absolutely horrible is this? How restrictive, how terrible this is. And I'll tell you what I'm sick and tired of them saying is that African Americans, black voters, can't get an ID. That sounds horrible to say that about somebody, doesn't it? Doesn't that sound horrible to say about somebody that they can't do something that everybody in this country can do? Or that when they have to look at their ID to know which one is the actual ID and which is another number. I saw that on CNN. They highlighted 2 sections of an African American's ID. Which one would be right for you? Can we continue to underestimate and talk about Black Americans as if they can't do things? Can we stop doing that? That'd be great. I would really like that. I'd really like if people stop saying that about African Americans, that they can't do things somehow that other demographics can do. Let's just stop doing that. That would be really nice. I think that'd be really nice. Do you think that'd be really nice? I feel like it would be great. Of course, this is all spun and spun and spun to say it's to suppress specifically the black vote. Let's stop stereotyping them, please. Why don't you say that white people can't figure out where that number is? Why don't you say that Hispanics can't figure out where that number is? The left continues to denigrate the black community, and it's gross. It's gross. I don't know how they get away with it, honestly. Plenty of black conservatives speak up against it. I just don't understand why others don't. These are the lies that's been coming out of Papa Joe and good old Jen Psaki. I got a video for you here. Juan, can you please play for me, cut forward? Let's see what Jen Psaki had to say on that voting law.
There was no widespread fraud in the 2020 election. Georgia's top Republican election officials have acknowledged that repeatedly in interviews. And what there was, however, was record-setting turnout, especially by voters of color. So Instead, what we're seeing here is for politicians who didn't like the outcome, they're not changing their policies to win more votes. They're changing the rules to exclude more voters. And we certainly see the circumstances.
Who said it had anything to do with an alleged, because I'm not going to say it happened, an alleged widespread voter fraud? Nobody said that. I cannot tell you how many people have blown me up based off of that lie right there. Well, you want to block something that never even happened. There is no widespread voter fraud. Do you have to have widespread voter fraud in order to make it more secure? As the governor himself said, why wouldn't you want to make it more accessible and more secure? You have more early voting days, which I'll get into that a little bit later when it comes to somebody else's number of voting days, Colorado. You have more early voting days. You have more opportunity to vote by making it permanent to absentee ballot for any reason. But you have Jen Psaki still up there saying that the right, the conservatives, the Republicans from Georgia are doing this based off of a lie. I just listed your actual lies. I went down the list of your lies. And then that's at least intimating at what I would think is a lie, that we're doing this on the right, that the Republicans in Georgia are doing this on the right, because it's happening in Texas and other places too. Now let's take a quick step back. Let's go in the Wayback Machine. Somebody you know who's incredibly good looking and has a fantastic haircut has been telling you guys for months, the beard is pretty good too, has been telling you guys for months that the states need to be doing this. And I am so thankful to see them doing it. Remember, our states are equal to each other. The states are individually kind of like small countries that have come together to be one large federal country. Texas can run Texas. Florida can run Florida. And California, you guys want to fall into the ocean? By all means, go fall into the ocean. I love everyone in California. You're great. The point I'm making here is the states can and do have the power, and they are using it. And for that, I am very, very grateful. And again, let me just recap it. It all comes down to voter ID. You can get an ID for free. You can put your last four of your social on there. You can use a bill. You can use anything with your address on it. That's what it all comes down to. Jen Psaki, you're peeing on my leg and you're telling me that it's raining. People want security in their elections. Polling has showed some 83+% of Republicans after the last election have lost faith or do not have faith in the electoral process. When you take into account the number of Democrats, you have a majority of people in this country do not trust elections. Polling is now also showing that a majority of people in this country want voter ID. People want security in their election. In this state, I've already mentioned it, you had to vote in person with an ID. Why not ID for voting? Why not ID for voting? Voting, however it is that you're doing it. This is not about suppressing votes. It's never been about suppressing votes. It doesn't have anything to do with addressing an alleged widespread voter fraud, which I am not alleging here. Don't take me down. Folks at Google, because this will be up on YouTube, and those on Facebook, which, by the way, let me just go off on a quick tangent. I just talked about the president and how he wasn't, this is a couple weeks ago, how they weren't allowing the press to go down to the border. And when you found that on Right America Media Network and you saw that I put up that video, it went to a private video. It's not listed as private. You had to go to my page. I had to specifically search for it. I'm a very small account on YouTube. We're a little bit bigger when we're on Facebook, but they somehow found that little video and just labeled it private. I went into the settings. It's public, but for some reason they found us. It goes back to all the things I was saying at the beginning, that we really need to stick together. We need to be able to get our voices out there, and we're gonna have to get away from these legacy platforms. And okay, we're back. So I'm told we had some technical difficulties. Thank you so much to Juan in the booth, and by the booth I mean New Hampshire. New Hampshire's the size of a booth, but thank you for being here. Let's get back into the meat of this one. Here we go. I can make New Hampshire jokes. I lived in Vermont. I can make the jokes. You guys come at me if you want. Major League Baseball came for Georgia. Why? Maybe because they were listening to clickbait headlines. Maybe because they were listening to the president of the United States when he not once, but twice, 3, 4, 5 times said that these laws were restrictive to Black Americans. Maybe they listened to all that. I don't know. Maybe they listened to a little video that I'm going to play for you here in a little bit. What did Major League Baseball decide to do about? Pull the game out of Atlanta. So they were going to have an all-star game in Atlanta, and the draft was going to be held there as well. And they decided, you know what? We're gonna punish them. Did any of them read it? Did any of them actually read it, or did they just succumb to it? Did anybody read it, or did they just say, hey, the president's saying it, or these activists are saying it, or people on Twitter are saying it? Did anyone here know that the African-American population in Atlanta is some 52%? Black people own businesses. Black people make money when the All-Star game comes to your city. You went ahead and cut your nose off to spite your face. Kudos, great job. Guess who's not going to see an influx of money somewhere around the All-Star game? Not only businesses in that area, Black-owned businesses. Great job. Great job for you. Great job. So let's go ahead and move the All-Star game. But why? Why are we moving the All-Star game? Do you think maybe something the president said might have something to do with it? Juan, could you please play for me cut 2?
Tony Clark is the executive director of the Major League Baseball Players Association. He said he would, quote, look forward to discussing moving the All-Star game out of Atlanta because Georgia Governor Brian Kemp signed into law a bill passed by the Republican-led state legislature to overhaul how its state elections are run. So, Mr. President, what do you think about the possibility that baseball decides to move their All-Star game out of Atlanta because of this political issue?
I think today's professional athletes are acting incredibly responsibly. I would strongly support them doing that. People look to them. They're leaders. Look at what's happened with the NBA as well. Look at what's happened across the board. The very people who are victimized the most are the people who are the leaders in these various sports.
The other side to it, too, is when they, in fact, move out of Georgia, the people who need the help the most, people who are making hourly wages, sometimes get hurt the most.
Uh-oh, Joe.
Tony Clark is the executive.
Uh-oh, Joe. Which one is it, buddy? Which one is it? Are these leaders, these athlete leaders, are they the ones who are most hurt? Or uh-oh, they left. And now they're telling me that Black-owned businesses and Black Americans who work hourly, like you're telling me, Joe, because a lot of us do, they're going to be hurt by this. Wow, Joe. Jen Psaki, captain of the debate team, girl next door, she also pressed back and said, well, it was Major League Baseball's decision. Joe Biden and other sound bites have said, well, it was their decision. I don't think I really had anything to do with it. Leader of the free world saying that I strongly support it right there on video. You all saw it, but I didn't really have anything to do with it. That was their decision. Maybe you should have thought of that beforehand, buddy. Maybe you should have. Stop peeing on my leg and telling me that it's raining, Papa Joe. Papa Joe, that was you. That was you. Stacey Abrams, the all-knowing, all-seeing, all wonderful that she is in Georgia, she even said this was a bad idea. She even went so far as to say African-American owned businesses are going to lose money because of this. But because she's as good as she is, blamed Republicans, went ahead and flipped that one over and said, well, Republicans chose this. Republicans chose this. Sounds an awful lot like do what we want or we're going to keep taking things away from you. Though, I don't know. It sounds like a threat to me. Do what we want or we'll continue to have businesses leave here and then blame you for it. So what it sounds like to me, I don't know. I'm not the smartest guy. I'm clearly not as smart as all these politicians that we have. I'm just some guy in my office talking about this stuff. But I can kind of see when I say you should leave and then you leave, I have something to do with it. You had something to do with it, Joe Biden. You had something to do with it. But you know what? I love it. As the kids would say, I'm here for it. Hurt yourself, Georgia. You just, according to you, went blue. I'm being told that they won. I didn't count all those votes. These are all factual statements. I'm told they won, and I did not count those votes. This is all fact. I'm not saying widespread voter fraud because there certainly wasn't. I know this because I know it. We're going to stop dancing around that one. Go ahead. Keep hurting them. Keep hurting them. You're sending $100 million. It's the estimate. $100 million lost. That's what you're sending. Keep doing it. You think you're blue? You want to keep it blue? Keep sending business away. Where are you sending it to? Colorado, where, according to the 2010 census, I looked it up. We don't have the 2020 numbers out yet. Let's talk about the racial makeup of Denver. 68.9% white, 10.2% black, as compared to 52% in Atlanta. Great job. Great job making sure that you're taking care of diversity and making sure that's a strong part of what you're doing. Great job. Guess what else Colorado has? Voter ID laws. Georgia has 17 days of early voting. Guess what Colorado has? 15. But we must punish those red states. We must punish those red states. And then if they push back, and then if they put in what their constituents voted them in to do, and they do it lawfully, of course, we'll blame them. You see, it wasn't us. It wasn't us that sent it to Colorado. It was clearly them. And then they throw out the new term. Once upon a time, it was very common. You might have heard it. They'll say, you're a Yahtzee. And I'm saying Yahtzee on purpose because I don't want to get found in the algorithm when they take a look at my speech here. Rhymes with something. You're a Yahtzee. Now, the big push is Jim Crow. Jim Crow 2.0. Jim Crow on steroids. Now, I didn't live through it. The gray hairs might make you think that I did, but I'm not quite that old. I didn't live through it. I needed to look it up. Let's go take a look at what it actually is. I did a little research. I'm going to pull it up just for you all. Here we go. Let me see if I can find this one for you. This is according to Ferris State University. They seem credible to me. What is Jim Crow? Jim Crow is the name of a racial caste system which operated primarily, but not exclusively, in southern and border states between 1877 and the 1960s. Jim Crow system was undergirded by the following beliefs or rationalizations. According to them, whites were superior to blacks in all important ways, including but not limited to intelligence, morality, and civilized behavior. All kinds of etiquette and laws that went with this. Let's talk about the law a little bit more. In 1890, Louisiana passed the separate car law. That's where you get the idea of separate but equal. Blacks were denied the right to vote by grandfathered clauses, laws that restricted the right to vote to people whose ancestors had voted before the Civil War. Jim Crow states passed statutes severely regulating social interactions between races. Does any of this sound like Jim Crow? They take advantage of the fact that people probably don't know what that is, and that is gross as well. You just throw around these terms that people lived through this. People who are alive today, they lived through this. And by the way, it was Democrats who passed these laws, just so you know, so we can be clear here. People who are alive today lived through this. And you throw out voter ID laws as Jim Crow on steroids, you have to get an ID to register. You have to have an ID to vote in person. Now we want to make sure that your vote is counted and valid through your mail-in ballot, which you can do for any reason. And that's Jim Crow on steroids. That's Jim Crow 2.0. You're gross. That's called demagoguery, by the way. That's called demagoguery. What is demagoguery? It's political activity or practices that seek support by appealing to the desires and prejudices of ordinary people rather than by using rational argument. That's what they're doing here. That's another gaslighting trick they like to do where they say it's Republicans that are demagogues here. We got a little vocabulary lesson for tonight. We're talking a lot about baseball. You know where else they play baseball? In that red state of Texas. Ooh, those red states, man. We really, really need to stop those red states. Did you know that they got rid of the mask mandate in Texas? What happened after that? Hey, I'll tell you what. Juan, can you please play for me cut one? Let's see what the great and powerful Fauci has to say about what's going on in Texas.
Texas Rangers say there will not be any attendance restrictions in their stadium this season. That means it could be filled to capacity, Mr. President, 40,000 people with masks required except when actively eating and drinking. What are your thoughts on the Rangers' decision?
Well, that's a decision they made. I think it's a mistake. They should listen to Dr. Fauci and the scientists and the experts.
In Texas, in that full ballpark in Arlington yesterday, there was a lot of concern last month when Texas effectively opened up, dropped all those restrictions and said it's back to life. And if you go to Texas, as you know, it looks like 2019. The restaurants and the bars are full and open. The ballparks are full. And yet we've seen cases and hospitalizations since then continue to tick downward. So what do you make of that as all of us look around and sort of try to consider how safe it is to get back to normal life?
Yeah, you know, it can be confusing because you may see a lag and a delay because often you have to wait a few weeks before you see the effect of what you're doing right now.
A few weeks? It's been 3. When's that lag going to show up? Oh, but when it does show up, this was the reason. This was the reason right here. If there's any sort of an increase, this was the reason right here. What are you going to do, Fauci? By the way, you're talking about baseball. Multiple times you've been asked by people, I believe it was Jim Jordan and Rand Paul, why you have to weigh in on baseball. You say, I don't weigh in on baseball. You're weighing in on baseball. You're weighing in on baseball. When you're asked why you're not weighing in on what's going on at the border, we'll talk about that in a little bit. That's not for me to say. That's not for me to say. You could talk about schools. You could talk about movie theaters. You could talk about baseball, but you don't talk about the border. No, that's not for me. And by the way, I don't talk about baseball except for when I'm talking about baseball and throwing out the first pitch and not wearing a mask when I'm sitting in the stands. Done with that guy. D-U-N, spelled correctly. Done with that guy. Done with that guy. Do you think there's some confusion? Does anybody think there's some confusion? Do you think he has something to do with some confusion? I was talking with a colleague today. I'm going to digress here a little bit. He's a younger guy, and he brought up how he was there to listen to Fauci. This guy's been put there. He was told that he's been there for decades and he's done great things. Then later it comes out that Fauci had the noble lie, as it's called. He, at the beginning of this, told people, don't wear a mask. You don't need to wear a mask. I showed it. I showed it in a previous episode. Go through my whole library. Find it all. You're going to love it. It's beautiful. He said back at the beginning, no reason for you to wear a mask. I think it was his revisionist history. I think it was his way to, one, look good, and two, erase that he didn't say something correctly. He goes back now and says, I had to tell the lie because it was for the good of the people. We needed more protective equipment to the frontline people. And if I said everyone should wear a mask, everyone would have ran out and got a mask and kept it from those that were in the hospital. BS, my friend, BS. You told people not to wear a mask. That's a fact. And then afterwards, you wanted to be a hero for it. And I don't buy it, sir. This person I'm telling you about said, now what am I supposed to believe out of him? Exactly. Exactly. What are we supposed to believe out of him? I don't know what I can believe on him when it comes to the border because, as I said a minute ago, that's not for him to weigh in on. He can weigh in on baseball. He's not going to weigh in on that we know factually they are letting people into this country who are testing positive for COVID and releasing them into the country. We know that. Are you weighing in on that? Nope, not his spot to do that. We know there's a higher infection rate of the people coming across the border right now at some 10%, which is much higher than the rest of this country. We know that Mexico has recently upped their infection rate and death totals by some 60%. Not for him to weigh in on that. Honestly, just stop talking. You're continuing to scare people. I watch on social media people attack other people whom they don't know because that person's not wearing a mask, because you're scaring them, Maybe you could push some positives. It is a good thing that we're going to have some 200 million people with at least their first shot coming up here pretty soon. It is a good thing that by the middle of this month, I believe, they're looking at it being available to anyone over 18. These are good things. Let's push this stuff. Let's talk about the likelihood of survival. Let's not plaster everywhere. There's a new variant. It's higher contagious. It's more dangerous. Everything's dangerous. Everyone's going to die. If you don't have a mask, everyone's going to die. I'm not saying don't wear a mask. I'm saying stop pushing the fear. You're making people scared for an unnecessary reason. And you have people attacking each other over it. And it's disgusting. You can also talk about who's vulnerable and who isn't. And here's another one. Can anybody please talk about herd immunity? Do you remember that phrase? Does anybody remember that phrase from back in the day? Herd immunity. That was something we talked about. When you reach a certain number of people who have already had a virus, you therefore get to a position where the virus can't spread anymore. They used to do back in the day what's called the chickenpox party. I remember when I was a kid. Kid on the block got chickenpox. Everybody on the block went and had a sleepover. Everyone got chickenpox. Guess what? Boom, done. Everyone's got chickenpox. It's over. Boom, done. It's over. I'm not saying to do that here. I'm saying it is an example of herd immunity. Quite literally the herd of these children who are always around each other. Let's just have them get done and over with now. We're done. I'm not saying everyone get together with people who are sick. Don't take it out of context. There's a term called herd immunity. This is how people used to do it. They used to artificially induce it. I'm not saying to do that here. Fifth time, I think. I'm not saying to do that here. Point is, there's something called herd immunity. Are we getting close to it? Are we getting close to it? 500,000 people have died from this. How many people have had it? You tell me that there's 4 to 10 times the number of people unconfirmed, meaning I know one person had it because they tested positive, but you're also telling me that the asymptomatic, those without symptoms, could be 4 to 10 times that number. Okay. So it makes it more dangerous to spread, right? That's why I should wear a mask, right? That's why I should socially distance even if I feel good, right? Well, what's the flip side of that? you have 4 to 10 times the number of people who have had it, which means you're that much closer to herd immunity. Put on top of that vaccines. You're that much closer to herd immunity. Is anybody talking about that? No. Is it to induce fear? I guess I can't really assign motive for people. Our friends in Texas got rid of their mask mandate. Everyone lost their minds. This was going to be the end of all of us. Because, of course, in liberal world, if the government tells you that you don't have to do something, that means that the government's telling you that you can't, because the government makes all your decisions for you, right? No, it just meant the government wasn't going to tell you to do it. You want to do it? Do it. You don't need the government to tell you. You have a business and you want people who come in your business to do it? Tell them to do it. Heck, you can even call the police if someone's not going to do it, and they'll remove them for trespassing. You can still do it. You know what Texas does have other than baseball? They got a border with Mexico. And it turns out, lo and behold, walls work. Who would have guessed it? I don't know if you guys have been hearing about this one. Starting to hear the mutterings out there. Uh-oh. Papa Joe might have to, as they call it, plug the gaps. Oh, I did air quotes. I did it. I'm going to have to make a bet with somebody so I pay them when I do that. I did it. I'm so mad at myself. Back to what's going on down in Texas. I can be mad at myself later. The wall has gaps in it. The gaps are being exploited. Let's see what good old Jen Psaki has to say about plugging up that wall. Can we play cut 3, please, Juan?
Construction remains paused to the extent permitted by law. So some has already been funded through congressional authorization and funding allocation. But as agencies develop for a plan, it's paused while agencies are developing a plan for the president on the management of the federal funds. It is paused. There's some limited construction that has been funded and allocated for, but it is otherwise.
So it's funded. Okay, that's really important, folks. Because it's funded, it's not xenophobic, it's not inhumane. Stop peeing on my leg and telling me that it's raining, Jen Psaki. You know the gaps in the wall are being exploited. So therefore, the wall works. Where there is a wall, people are going to where there is no wall. So Mayorkas has said we're going to have to plug up the wall. And she's going to say, well, it's already funded. It's not us. It's already funded. It's within the law. It's okay when you guys do it. It's already funded, right? It's not xenophobic. It's not inhumane. It's already funded. Except it's paused. Except it's funded, but it's paused. But it's paused, but it's funded. Let's try this one. You told me you were going to be transparent. You told me you're going to be unifying. I'm going to hold you to it because I'm a jerk. How about we say we're finding places that are being exploited. One of them is holes in the wall. I can still maintain that I would have not built the wall. However, the wall is there. There's holes in the wall. We're going to plug that up, and we're going to make it easier for our Border Patrol to gain control of what's happening at the border. Guess what? Guess what? You might look transparent. It might look like actual leadership. It might be actually unifying. These are horrible things, I know, because you got your left flank out there who wants you to destroy the wall, open the floodgates, push the wall down, welcome in the world. Your left flank is still going to be there. If you say we have to plug up the holes in the wall so we can get better control of the border, and then we can reassess our immigration platform at that point, your right flank is still going to be there. We're going to point at you and say we were right. And you can stand up and say, we are fixing the situation. The left is still going to be at you. The right is still going to be at you. We're both still doing it right now. So why don't you just take your lumps from us as you're actually fixing it? That would be great for me. Or keep peeing on my leg and telling me that it's raining. I'm going to make a hard turn here for you. Infrastructure bill. I touched on it a little bit last week, and it's a nightmare. I immediately did a little bit of math, and depending on who you're talking to, it's some 6 to 8 or 9% that goes to actual infrastructure. And of course, you've heard me go on and on about the idea of the language that they use. Of course, we want infrastructure. I cannot tell you how long I've been hearing about infrastructure. I swear, the first time I ever heard about infrastructure, I was a kid in the 80s. Hear them talk about infrastructure and how it's crumbling and how it's terrible. And They tell me it's crumbling and all the bridges are falling. I don't know. Everywhere I go, they're building bridges and they're building tunnels and they're building highway, but apparently it's all falling apart. Everywhere it's falling apart. So infrastructure. Infrastructure is the new word of the day. COVID-19 relief was what they first passed. Everyone wants relief. And it goes back to what I've said before. They don't separate out these different portions of the bill. They lump it all in together. And then therefore, if you say no to it, it's because you don't want infrastructure. In the COVID bill, if you don't want this to pass, it's because you don't want people to have relief. I make the exaggeration to make the point. If we pass a bill where everyone gets $1 million, but you have to drown a puppy, I'm not voting for that because I don't want to drown a puppy. I make an exaggeration to make a point. Separate them. Break them apart. As it stands right now, it's some 5 to 8% actually goes to infrastructure in the terms of roads and bridges. Okay, let's throw on top of that plumbing. Okay, I'm here for it. Let's talk about it. That's about a third. It's about a third of $2.25 trillion. 2.25. About a third of that would go to roads, bridges, and plumbing. So you still have some 66% that's not infrastructure, except if we redefine what is infrastructure. Kirsten Gillibrand, I'm going to pull this up. I'm on Twitter, by the way. I want you over there at 2cent KSJ. Drop it down there for me, Juan. We have Kirsten Gillibrand. Ready for this? Paid leave is infrastructure. Childcare is infrastructure. Caregiving is infrastructure. Papa Joe has gone on to say that broadband is infrastructure. Is a car infrastructure? What is not infrastructure? Paid leave. Paid leave is infrastructure. So we can just redefine things. Just redefine it. Put it in a tweet. It's real now. It's in a tweet. A senator wrote this. A senator from New York wrote this. That is infrastructure. This bill is going to be put on top of an artificially rising economy. I talked about it earlier. We had the best economy in the last 50 years, factually, some argue ever, under Trump until COVID hit. Lowest unemployment, actual wage growth, then COVID hit. And you had an artificial recession. And we climbed out of it at an insane rate. GDP numbers like we've never seen before in the third quarter. Job loss, first-time job loss claims dropping like a rock. We went to, I think, upwards of 14 to 16% unemployment. We're down to 6.3, according to the Brookings Institute. I've quoted it before. And if your state is open, you're under 5%. And we have an artificially rapidly climbing economy. It's really just getting back to where it would have been in the first place. You just take out that valley, and this is probably where we would have been. But you have the rate of change now is much higher because we had an unrealistic, unnatural recession. So they're going to ride that wave. It's an illusion. It's an illusion of a rapidly growing economy. We're just getting back to where we should have been. And then when we do actually open up, it'll climb again because we're the United States, our economy is going to be robust. The Democrats can do everything they can to tax us out of existence, but it's still a robust economy. They're going to ride that. And then they're going to say that it's going to be paid for by the corporations. Corporations are bad, right? Nameless, faceless, evil corporations who, according to Papa Joe, don't pay taxes. So when we say corporations, we mean Walmart, right? Amazon? Sure, says Jeff Bezos. He's all for it. He wants you to raise those taxes. Nike, right? That's a big corporation. McDonald's, that's a big corporation. That's who we're talking about, right? When we're going to tax the corporations, we're talking about these mega corporations. Guess who else is a corporation? Guess. Anyone with an incorporated business or an LLC, a limited liability corporation. The people you know who own small businesses, they're probably an LLC. They're probably incorporated. You incorporate or have a limited liability corporation to protect your personal assets. You're a corporation. They're preying on you again. They're peeing on your leg and telling you that it's raining. They're going after corporations. They let you fill in the blanks. They make inferences. No, they make implications. You make inferences. I almost screwed that one up. What happened to not taxing people who make less than $400,000, Papa Joe? Guess who draws an income from these corporations? Those same people that have the small businesses. They don't make over $400,000. And heaven forbid they should. We should punish them. Greedy as they are. He's only raising taxes on those who make over $400,000, right? Except for all those people who have LLCs and are incorporated. And by the way, when you raise taxes on the corporations, it gets passed down to the customers. They're not just going to pay more and not recoup these losses. You're going to have to raise your costs to buy. Your cost of production goes up, the cost to buy goes up. Now, I want to take a moment and objectively look at the idea of infrastructure and the relationship of the government to the private sector. So our government maintains major highways, right? And ports and airports. That comes from taxpayer dollars. Who gets to use that? Private companies. I get that. I do get that. However, how much of this is at the federal level? How much of this is at the state levels? When you have states who give the tax breaks, or the states that put up the tax money to make the deep water port, to improve the airports, to improve the train lines, to improve their highways, they're more competitive. Business goes there. Other states who aren't doing that, they need to be more competitive. You have 50 individual states. But of course, we have to have equal outcomes for everyone. Can't be the best outcome that can then be emulated and improved upon, and ingenuity and innovation. You can't have any of that. We have the one common result. Everything's got to be equity now. One common result. If this is actually about infrastructure, which it never is about what they say it's about, separate it. Separate it. Break it out. Let's get the bridges and roads. I'll vote for it. Let's go. Make a case for me on how that helps the American people and that the corporations are going to benefit from it. Let's have a conversation. Let's do it. Let's go. Paid leave is not infrastructure. Separate it out. Let the vote happen. But of course, you want to lump it all in together, and you're going to ride this artificial wave of a fast rising economy, which is based off of an artificial recession. These policies that you put in place, paid leave, paid this, paid that, paid everything, that's what leads to more people living off the system. Does anybody remember in the COVID bill? I know it's a really long time ago. Relatively, it seems like months have already gone by since that's passed. I'm talking like 6 or 8 months because of the breakneck speed at which they're going. In the COVID bill, it allowed you to not work if you felt that the environment was unsafe due to COVID. So now you have a situation where people aren't going to work, collecting unemployment, and getting a federal subsidy on top of that, living at home. I've experienced it here in Florida, where we've been open for quite some time, and I'm hearing more and more about it in other places, especially blue states. If you are open, people can't find employees. I can't go to a restaurant or stop through a drive-through without them saying, if you know anyone who's looking for employment, we're doing on-the-spot hiring. It's everywhere, especially in the service industry, which was artificially hit due to COVID. Now, people don't have to go to work. They're going to get unemployment. They're going to get a federal subsidy on top of that. They don't have to go back to work. More government programs means more people on the programs. And of course, those of us who are still working get to bear the brunt of that. Everyone. Okay. We're going to about wrap this up. I got a few more minutes. I said we had some more good news. The first good news of the night was mypillow.com. You're going over there. You're going to buy one of those pillows. I sleep with it every night. Fantastic. I love it. The sheets are great too, by the way. You're going to use the promo code RAM, R-A-M. You're going to go over to mypillow.com. RAM is going to be your promo code. More good news. Because Right American Media is committed to getting in there with the conservative voices, we are going to Tulsa, Oklahoma, of all places, the weekend of the 16th and the 17th of this month in April. Clay Clark is running what's called Attending Business School Without the BS. Sounds a little maybe outside of the conservative realm. However, we have some conservative speakers that are going to be there. Our good friend Mike Lindell will be there from mypillow.com, promo code RAM. General Michael Flynn, former National Security Advisor to the President, who in my opinion was treated horribly by the Department of Justice, and he showed great integrity as his family was absolutely put through the ringer. 2 more names that, guess what, I'm not particularly happy with. I'm not a down the line guy. If you're on my side and you say the things that I like and I want to hear, that I'm okay with everything that you say. Lynn Wood and Sidney Powell are going to be there. Lynn Wood and Sidney Powell had a lot of lawsuits after the election. I don't think much came of that. And I was a little unhappy as how that has all played out. I feel that those folks, I'll say it, they gave people false hope. And I really hope I get a chance to maybe talk to some of them. I'm not particularly happy with them. I know other people think that they have some things that they like or that they feel is valid or true. Good for you. That's for you. I feel that maybe we were sold a little bit bag of goods there. Maybe. When we're there, we're going to be on Right America Media Network. You can find us on Facebook. I'll be going live on Here's My 2 Cents on YouTube, at 2 Cent KSJ, Parler, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We'll be going live the whole time. Stick around for more updates on all of that. So with all that being said, all the good news, all the horrible news, that's been my 2 cents on stop peeing on my leg and telling me that it's raining.
Hi, I'm Charlie Sauer, president of the Market Institute Foundation and editor of U.S. Policy. Today we're talking about science and COVID and how we've likely been using science wrong in our response to the COVID pandemic. Now, the paper I want to talk about is one from Bob Grayboyce at the Mercatus Center. He's a senior research fellow there, and he's one of my favorite healthcare policy analysts. And in his paper, he talks about the fact that he's a mask wearer, and he's a mask wearer for several reasons. And it hit home with me because I'm a mask wearer too, and I happen to be a mask wearer for the same reasons that Bob is. And that's Pascal's wager. Pascal's wager, if you don't know, was this idea from Blaise Pascal back in 1600, and it was a religious wager. And it says that living a godly life isn't much of a price to pay for the possibility of the fact that there's a God. In other words, the marginal benefit you get from living an ungodly life isn't worth the eternal of damnation, if that's what you believe, the eternal of damnation if there is no God. And that's the Pascal's God wager. So Bob's conclusion is that the cost versus the benefit and the science that is out there says he should wear a mask. That's his wager. And there's a lot of things that prove that he's true. First off, the science is on his side. The science says that where people wear more masks, there's less COVID community spread. That's true. There is science out there that says that masks are good. One of the reasons I wear a mask is because the government told us not to so that they could hoard masks at the beginning. It's my way of giving the middle finger to the government. But I also think it has a health benefit. And the reason why this is important to talk about is that we have been using science incorrectly during most of COVID. Look, there have been studies that show that masks aren't effective. But that's the way science works. Science is science. Science is about research. Science is about asking questions. Science is not about telling us what to do or how to act. Science is there to inform us and help us and give us more information about the things that we do. As Bob points out in his article about mask wearing, there was a recent paper by Julia Belouz, and she has this excellent graphic that shows that food, almost all of the foods that we eat, both prevent cancer and cause cancer according to science. Now, what should be your takeaway from that? Does the cause cancer and prevent cancer fight with each other? Does the fact that it causes cancer mean that even though it prevents cancer, you can't eat it? No. You need to look at these things and make rational decisions. Is there a large risk? What does the research say? Does it say that it causes cancer 100% of the time? Does it say it does it in certain amounts? Does the prevention prevent all cancers? Does it only prevent it in certain types of people? What does the research say? But the fact is science isn't there to be prescriptive. Science is there to inform the prescription. We can't let science, how do I say this? Because I love science. I love research. We can't let science dictate the way that we live our lives on a study-by-study basis. We can't let science change everything 180 study by study. We need to listen to science and hear what the scientists are saying in the direction that they think the science is going in. And we need to use that to rationally inform our decisions. In the end, I'm a mask wearer. I'm a mask wearer because the science says that wearing a mask is beneficial. At least that's the way that I see the science. But look, the cost of wearing a mask is not that big. It's not a gigantic burden. If that is what allows us to go out and visit small businesses and go out and live our lives and do normal business during normal business hours in a normal business way, masks are a small price to pay. And if the science works out, then it is the correct price to pay. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please hit that like and subscribe button.
Ilhan Omar's AR-15 hypothesis, masks, vaccines, and following the rules, and why some people can't think for themselves. This is The Loaded Mic, and I'm Dan Wos.
You're listening to The Loaded Mic.
Ilhan Omar had a crazy hypothesis that if the Capitol killer had an AR-15, many more people would have died at the Capitol. She got destroyed online for this. But did she care? Did this tweet achieve the goal that she wanted to achieve? Here's the tweet. Take a look at this. She said, quote, "Heartbroken to learn another CP was killed while protecting the Capitol. My thoughts and prayers go out to the officer's family and the entire Capitol Police Force. The death toll would have been worse if the assailant had an AR-15 instead of a knife." End quote. Let's take a look at her politically biased propaganda and rhetoric. First of all, to separate the hypothesis from fact, we need to recognize if there's any solid data backing up her claim. In this case, there's absolutely none. Omar's claim is complete hypothesis. She said absolutely no proof that she had absolutely no proof that if the killer had an AR-15, he would have killed more people. Why? Because it never actually happened. We can't measure something that never happened, but that doesn't stop the anti-gun left from trying. The anti-gun crowd bases their entire fear campaign on false premises, hypothesis, and propaganda. And when they do venture out and try to present what they consider facts, it's usually gun studies that are performed for the sole purpose of creating data that will live forever on the internet in opposition to gun ownership. These studies are typically funded by Bloomberg, published by left-wing rags like Huffington Post, and fact-checked by Snopes. Moms Demand Action and other anti-gun groups will pick these false studies up and push them as fact in an attempt to fool as many people as possible. And the reality is they do end up fooling a lot of people because many people don't pay close attention and don't seek out the truth. So when Ilhan Omar makes her false claims about AR-15s, the anti-gun crowd, who, by the way, seeks out rhetoric like this to support their current beliefs, will allow themselves to become further indoctrinated. They completely ignore the fact that people like Stephen Williford, for instance, stopped the killer known as Devin Patrick Kelly during Kelly's mass killing of good people at the Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs, Texas. Stephen Williford used an AR-15 to stop the killer and save lives. So sorry, Omar. From what I can see, AR-15s save lives. Now, we know Omar's rhetoric is for the sole purpose of supporting universal background checks that Democrats are currently obsessed with. They're trying to make the argument that the reason people are using guns to kill people is because there's a lack of background checks in place. This couldn't be further from the truth. The problem with background checks is that they just don't work to stop bad people from doing bad things. They do, however, stop good people from being able to protect themselves and defend their families, which is why logical thinking people oppose them. Let me explain. In 2017, the Government Accountability Office did a study that showed 8.6 million background checks performed for gun purchases. Of that 8.6 million background checks, there were just over 112,000 denials. This is where the anti-gun crowd says, see, background checks stopped 112,000 mass shootings. Well, this too couldn't be further from the truth. Of those 112,000 background check denials, only 12,000 investigations were performed. This tells us that the FBI recognized the vast majority of the denials to be false positives. In other words, good people mistakenly denied their right to purchase a gun. So this is where the anti-gun crowd chimes in and says, see, background checks stopped 12,000 mass shootings. Again, the fearful anti-gunners are wrong. Maybe their COVID masks are on too tight and they're not getting enough oxygen, because of those 12,000 investigations, only, get this, 12 people who shouldn't have been buying a gun were stopped. That's 12, 1, 2, like in a dozen. And as a side note, if the 12 people who were actually prevented from purchasing a gun were cold-blooded killers, wouldn't they have already been in jail? The reality of the background check system is that it denied 112,000 people their right to purchase a gun, putting them in a very dangerous position of being unarmed and defenseless by a failed policy. I also think it's important to make the point that there are 2.5 million defensive gun uses per year. This most often means the violent attack is stopped by just the mere presence of a gun. It's not always good guys killing bad guys. This was a study by Florida criminologist Gary Kleck. So when we look at the vast number of people who are wrongfully denied their ability to defend themselves and their families with a gun, and we factor in the number of people who may not even be violent, who are prevented from purchasing a gun, and we include the fact that gun ownership potentially saves 2.5 million lives per year, Ilhan Omar's ridiculous anti-gun rhetoric falls to pieces. So I want to explore the left-wing hypothesis that if people are denied gun purchases, that they wouldn't kill. I also want to explore my own hypothesis that every good guy denied could be someone who would potentially save lives in one of these situations. Here in the studio today to discuss this is John Chiara. So today I'd like to bring John in. We're going to talk about this, and I also want to compare the number of deaths by gun to the number of defensive gun uses. So here we go. What's up, John? How are you?
Good.
Is that it?
Except you poked me in the eye before we started.
Yeah. John's eye is all bloodshot, and
must have had a bad dream.
Nobody knows why. So I think he's drinking too much last night.
Well, what flashed to me when you were talking about Omar's situation is that this is part of what I think we're seeing as the left's narrative beginning to eat itself, because they realize from maybe a marketing perspective that if they get this idea out there, it's going to stick.
Yeah.
It's like putting it on the front page in the New York Times and putting retraction in a week later on page 39. It's not the same thing, right? Doesn't it? So I think, but this also explains why that culture, the cancel culture, is trying to keep any conservative ideas from being put out there, because he realized that once people hear that idea, it might stick in their mind. So they figure they have to cancel it before any chance of that information getting out goes. So it's all one-sided, but...
Well, if we tell them all the time, we say, there are 2.5 million defensive gun uses per year. People, in other words, people just by having a gun in their belt, on their hip, on their ankle, in their purse, wherever,
right,
and most often just presenting that gun to a situation where they're being attacked or whatever, that the violence goes away. It stops because the criminals, they don't want to get killed. They want to go on to commit crime another day. And the worst thing to them is an armed victim.
Well, that's their business. They don't want to be put out of business.
That's right.
Which being shot pretty much does.
That would do it. Yeah. So the truth is that where there's more concealed carry or open carry, for that matter, there's less crime. The facts are there. The studies have been done. The anti-gun crowd has these studies. They have them. We give them to them. We tell them this stuff all the time. They just don't want to see it. So what Ilhan Omar does is they know that the AR-15 is a trigger point for people. And they've created it that way with their whole so-called assault weapons, rhetoric and their AR-15 and all their stuff, the gun violence and the weapons of war and all the crap that they use to demonize guns and gun owners. They know that the minute they say AR-15, there's going to be a whole vast number of uninformed people, primarily on the left, who pay no attention.
It's just flipping a switch.
Yeah. Exactly.
Robert Cialdini, in his book Influence, calls that the click-whir reaction.
What is it?
Click-whir. It's like putting a card into a machine. It's already programmed to do what it is. Once you get it in there, bang, click, outcome. That's how the media has gotten the people programmed now, though. Where, again, we've mentioned before, all they have to do is bring up a topic and people are off and running on it because they know we know what AR-15 means. That's an assault weapon. That's mass murder. That's these shooters. That's because the right doesn't want to have background checks. All this rhetoric piled layer on top of layer, when really, like you say, if you look at the numbers from real studies, none of that holds any water. But it doesn't matter because nobody calls them on it.
And their background check rhetoric has become so thick and so strong and so voluminous. Yeah, that's a word. That's a word for the day. How's that? Voluminous.
I have voluminous blood vessels in
yes,
my right eye.
So because their rhetoric behind background check is so voluminous, the minute you say something like I say all the time, background checks are useless. They're doing no good. They're doing no good for good people. That statement comes off like, oh, that's a ridiculous statement. I can't believe he would say something like that. And I get the feedback all the time from the anti-gun crowd. Are you kidding me? Background checks are yeah, that's right. They're no good. They're useless. And I just stated in the monologue why. 112,000 denials, only 12,000 investigations leading to only 12 people stopped. John Lott says in one of his studies, and based on this Government Accountability Office data, he says that the background check denials are 99% or more false.
Right.
So
all those people are denied.
They're denied for no good reason. And there was and I think I've talked about it on the show before. There was one guy who was denied, I think he was in Virginia. He was denied because his name and social security number were close enough to that of a convicted felon. And then the guy from Florida, we talked about, I can't think of his name right now, but the guy from Florida, his company had gone out of business, went bankrupt 20 years prior, and he bounced 2 checks as a result. In other words, he probably got his check from his company and it was no good.
Sure, right.
So he puts it in his bank. I'm guessing at this point, I don't know exactly how it happened, but I'm guessing he put the check in his bank. He started writing checks. He bounced 2 checks because the funds weren't there. So when you bouncing a check is a crime. It's illegal. So what happened was, I guess they sorted it out and they figured out that, and he got cleared of it. So he was told that his record was clear. 20 years later, this guy goes and he tries to get a handgun or a gun. He did a background check. I'm not sure if it was a handgun or a rifle, whatever it was. And he was denied. And he said, why? And they said, well, it was because you bounced checks 20 years ago. I mean, So how is that good? How is that helping anybody?
Well, how confusing is that, first of all? And how does it show how convoluted things can get with a system that doesn't really function correctly?
Right.
And yet there was no election fraud.
Look, I always say if a gun law, a gun restriction needs to meet 3 criteria. It must not infringe on the rights of people. It must prove to save lives, and it must never put the gun owner in danger. Just never put them at risk. 3 very simple criteria, but I haven't seen a gun restriction that meets any of those things.
None.
It's a simple concept. We have the Second Amendment. It outlines our right to keep and bear arms. Don't infringe upon it. Just don't violate that right. Don't put me in danger or my family by restricting me of my magazine capacity or whatever. And if you're going to present, a gun law, at least try to show us that you mean well and prove to us how it's going to help.
Well, this is the thing, is there's never any results, right?
Right.
I mean, going back to like the machine gun ban and stuff back in the 80s, whatever, it didn't do anything. It didn't change any numbers. But that doesn't seem to matter to half the population. They just, the intent is what matters, right? We want to save people's lives. Well, how many people's lives are you saving if 12,000 people are denied getting a handgun when maybe they need that to protect themselves? Well, don't worry about them, right?
Right.
It's so lopsided. It's a double standard.
I don't want any gun restrictions. There should be no gun restrictions. And again, I say that and people start flipping out and losing their minds. Well, here's what I mean by that. No gun restrictions whatsoever. The restriction should never be put on a gun, because when you put a restriction on a gun, it affects all guns, those in the hands of bad guys and those guns owned by good guys. But the problem is the bad guys pay no attention, and the good guys are the ones being restricted. So no gun restrictions. You put the restriction on the bad guy. Right. When somebody does something violent or whatever the criteria will be for denial of gun purchase, and he gets due process and he gets convicted of that crime, then the violation sticks with that person,
right,
for their whole life or for a certain amount of time or whatever that turns out to be.
Well,
you do not put the restriction on a magazine and make it illegal to have more than 10 rounds or whatever in that magazine, because that affects me. And I haven't done anything wrong.
Right.
I should be able to have as many rounds in my magazine as I want. So no gun restrictions whatsoever. The restriction should be on the bad guys.
Absolutely. Well, I saw somebody put up a comparison the other day between restrictions that are on cars and restrictions on guns. And my response was, nobody tells you what kind of car you can buy.
Yeah.
You can buy as fast of a car as you want. Doesn't mean you have to drive it fast, but if you do, then you're held responsible. Right, exactly.
You can have as much horsepower as you want in your car. You build in the horsepower all you want. But the minute you break the law with that car, then the restriction goes on you. And here's another thing. We talked about drunk driving before. People get drunk, caught drunk driving, and I don't know whether it's 1 or 2 times or whatever, they lose their license, right? That person loses their license. I don't lose my license for some.
I can still buy his car and drive it. Nothing wrong with the car.
And then you say, okay, then you go further. You take that concept and you say, well, okay, so the person who was drinking and driving lost their license. Now, maybe after a certain time, they get their license back. But let's say there's a restriction put on their vehicle, like I talk about this a lot, about the breathalyzer ignition.
Right.
They have to, because they did this crime, they have to breathe into the breathalyzer before the car will start. Okay. I don't want a breathalyzer ignition on my car because this guy was drinking and driving.
Exactly.
Why should I have a restriction on my guns because this guy did something bad with his guns?
Well, see, this is what many seem to not appreciate, right? They think that that's all makes sense. And we're over here going, wait a minute.
Something's wrong
Do
here.
I have to buy a car with that? How much is that extra breathalyzer going to cost me when I buy my car?
Yeah.
An extra $500-$600, $1,000, whatever it is? Why do I have to bear the brunt of
What
that?
if I got a cold and I'm using NyQuil? and I can't start my car, and I'm late for work, or I have to bring my wife to the hospital to give birth, and I can't because I'm blowing into this stupid thing because I had NyQuil the night before, and now we got all sorts of medical issues and stuff. I'm just saying some ridiculous.
Danny just perked up. Oh, a little brother.
A little brother.
Well, I heard years ago someone proposed that any crime committed using a handgun should have a mandatory 20-year sentence or something. If I walk into a bank with a gun in my hand, you're out of there, right? There shouldn't be any question. That would at least make people think, am I going to use, that would be much more effective, right? As far as keeping people from using guns in criminal situations. Because if you're just going to wave it around, then nobody's going to do anything to you. But if you're going to wave it around, you get arrested and go to jail for 20 years, I would think twice about that. I wouldn't go to Walmart and take a pellet gun out and point it at people in the parking lot if I knew that I was going to go to jail for 20 years.
This is what I'm saying. Put the restriction on the people who do bad things.
Well, that's what laws are for. Laws are there to affect people, not to affect. And as we said, the Second Amendment is already the most restricted amendment ever in the Constitution. Because when it was enacted, it was all there were what? Muskets, rifles, maybe cannons. You could own a cannon back then.
They were making semi-automatic guns back then. There was processes. They were doing stuff.
3D printing.
But I know what you're saying. They weren't 3D printing. They weren't, Well,
what I'm saying is that now, I mean, you can't own a tank. You can't own bombs. You can't own a mortar, grenades, bazookas. You can't own anything.
I should be able to have a tank in my front yard if I want. I've never done any damage with a tank. What am I going to do? Run through and destroy the cul-de-sac with my tank? Come on. I've never done anything. Well, that was another argument. People say, well, you can't have a tank, you can't have an army tank, or you can't have a machine. Why can't I have a machine gun? Why the hell not? What have I ever done that would restrict me from having a machine gun? Where did this concept come from that because machine guns are super scary, nobody should have them? Well, they're not scary to me. I'm not scared of them. I should have one. I should be able to have one. I've never done anything wrong. I haven't got more than a traffic ticket.
And I was watching videos of somebody shooting a fully automatic machine.
And they're fun as hell.
They said it was a blast.
Literally a blast. I know.
Exactly.
But this is what happens in our society with the propaganda and the rhetoric and just all the left-wing nonsense is that people are scared to death and they don't know what the hell they're scared of because they've never actually shot these guns. They've never owned them. All they hear is CNN talking about how scary this stuff is and how dangerous it is. But the truth is, you talk to any gun owner. I go all over the country and I meet with gun owners all over the place, the most respectful and responsible people. I go down to Alabama, for instance. I just think about Alabama a lot because the guys down there, Bama Carries, a gun rights group down there, great guys, fantastic guys. And these are the type of guys that will give you the shirt off their back. They'll also break your nose if you need it, right?
You try to take their gun.
Exactly. So I just love the people down there in Alabama. Everybody's walking around with a 1911 on their hip. There's not a problem. No problem. Everybody's nice to each other. Everybody's polite.
But that's obvious, correct? If you just looked into that, that would be obvious.
Yep.
And yet so many people just ignore that, like, well, that doesn't matter. Well, but that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
This is the whole concept of that. I mean, the country was put together, I assume, assuming that people were going to be responsible citizens, right? And if not, they locked you up, right?
Yeah.
That's what happened. You got sent to the work camp for 10 years,
It should be about the people, not about the gun, not about the car, not about the knife, not about any of the stuff, because the stuff can be used for good.
Well, the stuff is tools.
Yeah.
You don't demonize tools.
A car can be used to mow people over, or it can be used to take people to the hospital.
Right.
A gun can be used, obviously, we know this, 2.5 million times per year in America to save lives, stop a violent crime.
Now, see, that's not hard for me to visualize, but that must be hard for some people to visualize, right? Because they've never had a gun in their hand, probably, or they've never been in a situation where I was just telling a story yesterday about how years ago, right after the George Floyd incident, I was living in downtown Albany, and I was driving on my way to the gym in a loaner car from the dealer, and 2 little kids were walking across the street, and one of the kids jumped up in the air backwards and fell on the hood of my car and then fell on the ground. Like, this guy ran me over. So I'm in the car, even way back then, thinking, what do I do now? And the end of the story clears this up. So I pulled over, picked the kid up, brought him to the curb. Somebody called an ambulance. The fire department guys came, right? The rescue guys came. And while I was kneeling over in the street trying to make sure this kid was okay, and I knew that it was fake because I just looked at the kid. He literally jumped. He did a foosberry flop backwards right into the hood of my car and fell on the ground.
Looking for a payout.
Looking for a payout or looking for something, whatever. So while I was kneeling down with the kid, somebody came running out of the crowd from behind me, and I heard him say, "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" Not realizing I lived like literally a block and a half away. Punched me in the face, broke my jaw, and the kid, there was nothing wrong with the kid. So the firemen told me afterwards, they said, the smart thing to do, keep driving, go to a phone booth when you're far enough away.
When was this?
Rodney King. When was Rodney King? I don't know.
That was 90s.
Danny, have to look it up.
Was
Probably
it?
the 90s, yeah. But that's the kind of thing that, again, if you've never been in a situation, not that I would have been able to protect myself with a gun, but the point being is that if you've been in a situation where you've been threatened, well, like what happened with you at the movie theater, where you felt like you might have been being threatened and you realized that you had no way to do anything about it. That's helpless. Why do we don't need helpless citizens. Right. We need responsible citizens able to protect themselves.
Right. Well said. Yeah. And, but I think what happens is you have people in our society who are willing to take responsibility for themselves. They are willing to be responsible people and do the right thing and protect themselves and their families and go to work and make money and be productive elements in the society. But then you have people who don't want to do that. And I always say, and you know, I'm beating up on the left again because I like to, but they deserve it, because with all this, for instance, I'm trying to work to a thing here where I'm trying to bring this thing around so I can explain to you what I'm talking about.
Just circle back.
So I'm going to circle back here, but the rule followers, it's like they don't want to think for themselves. They just want to be given a rule, given a guideline, given a structured way of doing things,
right?
And then they'll follow that.
And that's their internal narrative, right? Do they assume that criminals are doing that? Because I see no evidence of that. The whole point of the whole thing is that the criminals are not doing that. You're a rule follower. This guy isn't. He's the problem.
Yeah.
All of us over here are following the rules to the best of our ability because you're forcing us to, basically. But we've never done anything wrong.
Right.
So why not blame the person who's out there doing something wrong? And I don't know how you fix that. You know, this is all part of the same mentality of, you know, everything should be zero. There should never be any shootings. Okay, well, there should never be any car accidents either. So we should just lower the speed limit to 10 miles an hour. Then there'd be no car accidents. Is that acceptable? That doesn't work. Nobody ever plugs these things into an actual analysis and says, well, what might the outcome be here? Let's restrict all these people over here with more and more rules, and yet the people that actually cause the harm don't pay any attention to the rules. I understand that. You understand that. Why doesn't everybody get that? It happens every single time one of these things happen, is there's always somebody doing something irresponsible and hurting another human being.
So what they want to do is they seem to think that more rules, we already have, the rules are already in place. I mean, the laws are already in place. You hurt someone, or you kill someone, or you do whatever, there's a penalty for that.
Well, that's the deterrent, right? And like I said, the penalty aspect of it, like if you walk into a bank with a gun and you get caught, 20 years, boom, no questions asked. That's a deterrent to the people who already don't obey the rules.
And the people who might be watching.
Right. They understand that. They think here's a law. I don't have to pay attention to that. Yeah. I can go down the street and grab a gun out of the garbage pail, community gun number 22. Yeah. I can go get that and go do something and put it back, and nobody will ever know. But if you got caught with that and you were put away for 20 years, that would be a deterrent for me if I was thinking to do that. The same as it would be a deterrent to me if I wanted to go drive 100 miles an hour down the road. If you get caught going 100, we're taking your license away. No questions asked. Nobody would go 100 miles an hour. Right. But at least it would hold the people responsible. Not that I agree that should be a law, but my point is that some people obey the law, some people don't. So like you said, punish the people that don't obey the law in a way that will actually affect them, not in a way that restricts everybody else's liberty.
Which brings me to the point that we have rule followers who are obsessed with, for instance, during this COVID ridiculous nonsense, the masks and now the vaccines and now talk about vaccine cards and all this stuff. You have people who are literally obsessed with this stuff and want you to do it too. Right. You got to wear that mask. No, I'm sorry, not going to wear a mask. I think it's stupid. It's unnecessary. It doesn't work anymore. I don't even know if it worked in the beginning. I mean, you had Dr. Fauci, Faucci, Dr. Fauci. That's my new name.
Did you make that up?
I made that up.
That's pretty clever, Dan.
You got Dr. Fauci in the beginning talking about no need to wear a mask.
Well, it's all over the map, right? The rhetoric.
Stupid.
This is the whole problem, is that because of the way the media is set up, you have to put content out every day. And if you look back, I wish somebody would put a chart together with all the things. Well, I'm sure people have, of all these things that all these experts have said over the past year and how many months, and see how many things actually turned out to be true or made a difference or were even things that we needed to consider or not. Because nobody knows that. But to just blindly, well, I mean, I guess there's people on all sides that blindly follow whatever rhetoric they're told to follow. But
we're trained, I think, from the time we're kids to follow the rules. And it's just, and most of the time, I think if people use their own common sense and just thought for themselves about a particular situation, we'd be much better off. Because you got people like now, like the maskers and the vaxxers and these people who are just insane with this obsession to follow the rules. And I want to get back, and I see out of the corner of my eye, Dan Wos Jr. is telling us to wrap it up. So right after the break, I want to get back to this the rule followers.
Gotcha.
Okay, take a break.
I'm Dan Wos Jr., producer of The Loaded Mic. I just wanted to let you know that you can find us at Simul TV, Right America Media, YouTube, and Rumble. You can also find the podcast at Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. Or you can go to loadedmic.com. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and leave a review.
The Second Amendment is a priority at the Loaded Mic. If we don't defend the right to keep and bear arms, there are people who are happy to violate it. The strategies and tactics of the anti-gun crowd and politicians are sinister, and we need to understand those tactics. I wrote the Good Gun, Bad Guy book series as the rule book to their evil game, so we can understand their strategies and motives to defeat them. Understand the mindset of the anti-gunner in Book 1. Learn the media strategies behind the gun grab in Book 2. And understand the politics behind their mission in Book 3. Go to goodgunbadguy.com.
All right, so we're back, and I wanted to I know when we went to the break, we were talking about rule followers. Now, here's a point I want to make. I think people can think for themselves, and I think we'd be much better off if we were able to do that. In other words, once I see the data on the masks and the virus and the vaccine and all this, I'll make my own decision. And frankly, I think people are insane with the masks. Okay, I think it's just gone absolutely ridiculous because a couple reasons. I was just in Florida. Florida's wide open. They've been open for months.
Right.
Everybody's fine. Okay, it's like chill out with the masks. But here in New York and other blue states, the propaganda in the media is so strong that they're scared to death. Right. They're literally scared that they're going to catch this virus. Some of them are scared. Some of them, I think, just like the idea of, and this is a projection, I'm just guessing because I'm not in their heads, but it would appear that they like the idea that they're being seen as obedient. They're the good kids. You know what I mean?
Right. It's an acceptance thing.
Well, remember, you get a gold star in elementary school for walking on the line or staying in
your lane, basically. Well, back to the thinking thing before.
And I got a story about elementary school.
Okay, good. Go ahead. The whole idea is that so often we hear stories about kids asking their parents, "Well, why do I have to do that?" because I said so.
Oh, right.
That's great when you're a kid. That's why I say to many people when they say things, I go, that's basically a child's view, because your parents, who are technically in charge of you as a young person, know more than you. Don't run in traffic. Don't put your hand on a hot stove. Don't, stand behind a car when it's backing up. Things like that. Don't put your hand in the lawnmower, that kind of stuff, because I'm telling you, because I know that that's going to be a bad thing. But the media is not my parent. I don't need them to tell me how I should think about all this stuff. I can look at it myself and decide. And then if something happens to me because of that, I'm responsible for it. It all comes back to that same personal responsibility thing, which is part of liberty that's supposed to be there. So,
but I'm watching these COVID people, the people who are really obsessed with it and who really think that it's taking over the world and killing everybody. I mean, first of all, where are all these people dying? I don't see it. People. You would think by the media and by the rhetoric that there are people dropping dead all around us. Where are they? I just don't see
they're
it.
with all those other people where we don't know where they are either.
I just don't see
all the racists, all of this, all of that, all those people that they think exist out there. Okay, where are they? I don't know.
But they're obsessed with this rule following and this obedience, and they want you to do it too. And it's like, I really start to think that they want you to see that they are the best rule followers. Is that maybe a credible to that?
Well, that's a value of that. I think the media and the narrative aspect of it has created that. Like if you follow this, then you're a good person.
You're good.
If you don't follow this, then you're a bad person. See, this is the whole problem we're trying to deal with the left, and I hate to keep using that word. You know who I'm talking about out there. I hate to keep using that word, but if you think that people that don't do what you think they should do are bad people, where do you go with that conversation? Like, I disagree with people on their ideas. I don't think they're evil people, but if you're on one side and think that everybody who's on the other side is evil, I don't know where you're taking that. Where's that going to end up? You can't have a conversation with them because you already don't respect them.
And I think it starts in childhood. I really do. I think that maybe some kids more than others are taught to be obedient, where other kids may have more liberties and able to make their own choices and their own decisions.
Well, maybe that's true. See, now I grew up, basically, I did whatever I wanted my whole life. I mean, to the degree that I wish my parents had more savvy and intervened more, because I think my father was really together in a lot of ways, but our relationship was such that I never got a lot of information from him. He wasn't saying, hey, try this, do this, do this. Even when it came to things like golfing and stuff, he was just upset that I wasn't better than I was. You know what I mean? Instead of being nurturing in that way. Right. But I'm saying for a lot of people, I don't know what they're taught as children. Are they? I don't think they're taught to just obey anything blindly up to a certain point, maybe. But after you're a teenager, teenagers are rebellious.
I'll give you an example. Like I think that I pretty much did my own thing too as a kid. I learned by doing.
Right. Right.
Maybe because I was kind of out there on my own, doing my own thing, pretty young. And but one thing that I was thinking about this, about all this rule following and all this stuff. And I remember back in school, like elementary school, Pashley Elementary School in Burn Hills. People can look that one up.
Right down the street.
Right. And I remember all the kids would leave the classroom and we'd walk all the way around the hallway, around the school to the cafeteria for lunch, right? And I looked at it and I'm like, this is stupid. Why are we walking all the way around when we can just go this way and we'll get there in half the time? Right?
Shortcut,
but all the kids,
man.
Shortcut. It made sense to me, right?
Gotcha.
So all the kids would walk on the line in the hallway and in a nice straight and orderly line and walk all the way around to the cafeteria, and then and just like good obedient, children, right? And everybody just did that day after day after day. And it became part of the process, go to lunch, you go and then one day I said, well, wait a minute, this really doesn't make sense. If we go the other way, would be there in like half the time. And I could be first in line and get my choice of slice of pizza, because that was a big thing. You wanted to get the best slice of pizza when you get to the cafeteria, right?
First world problems.
You don't want the crust. You don't want the crust. So I asked one of my friends, I said, hey, let's go this way.
So what was the other way? Was it just another hallway?
I know now, I learned then.
Oh, there's
After I learned why they did that is because the other class was the cafeteria. There were two like lunch periods.
Yeah.
So the other group was going that way to their classroom. So this way you wouldn't have the two groups colliding, right?
Okay. So traffic control.
So they had a traffic control situation, which I believe in, and I think that's fine. That's why we have traffic lights and stuff like that.
Right.
But the point is that when I looked at the situation, I didn't have all the data, so I didn't know that. But I looked at the situation, I was able to, and we're talking like what, 3rd, 4th grade, something like that. How old are you in 3rd or 4th grade?
8.
Danny Wos Jr., you're close enough. How old are we in 3rd or 4th grade?
Close enough.
11? Okay, so.
No. 3rd grade, you're like 8. You're 5 in kindergarten,
10?
6, 7,
Anthony's
8.
saying 10.
He's off too.
All right, well, whatever. Smart enough to know that if I think for myself, we can go this way, get there quicker, more efficient, better,
Sure,
right?
Right.
The point is, you have the vast majority of people who are willing to just do what they're told, follow in line. And then you always have a few people who are like, that's not going to work so much for me. I'm going to do it my way.
Right.
That was the way I always was. I'm going to do it my way. And I suppose if I screw up or if I fail, then
Well, see, but that's part of a success formula, first of all, and I just thought about this driving up on the way up, because I was thinking about this same situation about people that always want you to follow the rules all the time. The thing of it is, the people that don't follow the rules are the reason that we have microphones and cameras and lights and all this stuff, because those people weren't following the rules. They were doing their own thing, come up with their own ideas.
Innovating,
right. You don't get innovation if everybody just follows.
By the way, we have these new windscreens, orange and blue, loaded mic colors, and
pretty cute, aren't they?
Yeah, I like them.
I didn't tell you what I did to them before I put them up here, but go ahead.
Well, it doesn't smell like Bologna, so I think we're good.
That's not what it smells like. But traffic is a great example, because traffic laws work because we all agree to follow them.
Right.
But like anything else, when you violate the traffic law, you're held responsible.
Right.
Not the car.
Right.
It's the person that's breaking the law.
And not everybody else on the road.
Right.
Like if I commit a traffic violation, I run a red light, say.
Right.
The other people at the intersection aren't in trouble.
They can still buy as fast a car as they want. Right. It's got nothing to do with anything. See, but this is all, again, and we talk about this a lot, this is all progressive logic that makes sense step by step by step. If you just are open to looking at all the information and saying, okay, what does this give us? What's the result? What does it do? When you have gun laws, what does it do? When you pass a gun law against machine guns, what does it do? In other countries, when they take away the guns, what happens to the murder rate? All these kinds of things, these are multivariate analysis of these situations, because there's a lot of variables. What most people do, and what the news does, is they pick on one thing and say, look at this, because of this happens, therefore this is wrong, so we pass a law.
And it's like a punishment. Like
it's
when
a
you're
punishment,
when you're a kid, and little Johnny, I'll use your name. Little Johnny writes on the wall with crayons, so his brother and sister lose the privilege of using the crayons too. That's like, oh, you screwed up. Now nobody gets the crayons, right?
Great, right?
The other kids are going, well, wait a minute. What the hell did I do? I didn't write on the wall. It's this jackass who wrote on the wall. Why are we getting in trouble?
I did that my first job at a department.
That's why I used your name.
First job at a department store. We had these big. I was in receiving. We had these big garage doors that opened up, and I wrote something inside of one of the the slots where the wheels go. I wrote something inside of there, so you could only see it when the door was open.
Oh.
Right? But it was a dig about one of the other guys that were working, and it wasn't even a negative thing. It's just that I wrote where I shouldn't have been writing. Yeah. Guess who got punished for that?
Everybody.
Me.
Oh,
no, just me.
Okay.
Right? That's what I'm saying. Nobody else did. Well, but they made a big thing of it and stood everybody there and said, "See, you shouldn't do this." Blah blah blah.
And that goes right back to the mindset that primarily the liberal progressives have. They seem to want to live under this whole umbrella of rules and laws and regulations that govern everybody, and totally disregard the fact that people can think for themselves. And I shouldn't be my rights shouldn't be violated because you can't take responsibility for yourself, or because you screwed up, or because somebody else screwed up. So this is why I think conservatives gravitate toward the right, and conservatives gravitate over here and say, wait a minute, rights come first.
Right.
Rights are the first most important thing before legislation and regulations and laws and legislation, all this stuff. Rights are first. Liberals are saying rules and regulations are first, because rules and regulations in their mind represent safety.
Right.
And over here on the right, conservatives say rights coming first represent freedom. Which is more important, safety for the lefties or freedom for real Americans? And I think that's where our clash is. Did you see how I threw that in?
I saw that, but pretty slick there.
Lefties want rules and regulations because they'll feel safe.
Right.
Safe. Real Americans, conservatives, want freedom. Rights, number one. This is why I don't think we will ever come together on this stuff. And I think that anybody who's leaning toward a society of rules and regulations that are unnecessary and violate rights, I think anybody who pushes for that stuff and supports that stuff needs to get deported, and not in a nice, easy way. I think we need to catapult them over Trump's wall. What are your thoughts on that?
Right to Mexico. I agree. Well, but bringing all that back to the gun discussion, again, it's like there's no evidence that all these rules do anything to stop the things that we all agree are bad, right? All the shootings.
There's actually data that shows that they don't.
Probably the opposite.
Yeah.
I assume, right? Because it gets in, well, like you say, if it denies 12,000 people a year from getting guns, where
112,000.
112,000. Oh, wow. Well, that's even more so.
12,000 investigations.
Investigations, right. 112,000 denials.
Only 12 people stopped.
So now what other system with those numbers would fly? What system where out of 12 people out of all that was true, you would dissolve that system tomorrow?
Let's take credit cards, for instance. Let's use credit card approval and compare it to gun ownership.
Okay, that's good.
Okay? So let's say now that there's a criteria for credit card approval, which there is. There's a, you got to have your credit checked and all that stuff.
Right. Well, the credit score is a good example in all this, because it's the same kind of situation.
So let's say that the credit scoring system for you to get a credit card or a mortgage or a car loan or whatever it is flawed as the gun background check system, where 112,000 people are being denied their credit approval, right?
Yeah.
And come to find out that really out of that 112,000 denials, there were really only 12 people who didn't make it.
That's fair, right?
Right.
Now, people will be just screaming discrimination right off the bat, regardless of who the people involved were, right? Because that's just a horrible thing that should ever happen to anybody. Couldn't buy a house. You're denied. Yeah. You're being discriminated against. All for a system that's obviously flawed.
Right.
It's just there's so many of these flawed systems around, though. I get frustrated because people just keep throwing the same stuff back up over and over, same arguments over and over and over again. Well, what about this? We've already been through that. We've already told you that the numbers don't add up. That doesn't make any sense. That's not doing what you claim it was supposed to do.
Right.
You said you wanted to stop this, so we're going to do this, but this process didn't stop that. So we need to reevaluate that. We don't need to leave that on the books like everything else and just add more to it, because this is the whole double down theory.
Made in New York.
Double down on hard ways. That's the band. Just
is that a band? Oh,
I forgot I had it out when you said it. But this is what people do, right? They when their narrative gets challenged, the cognitive dissonance sets in, and what do? They double down. Oh no, we're just not doing it enough. It's the same argument with communism. Nobody's ever done it the right way. That's why it's never worked.
And that's what the Democrats are pushing right now when they talk about their universal background checks. So already I just showed you today how background checks are flawed
Right.
and a complete disaster and useless. And they're no good.
And that's all documented. That's not even made. That's not fake, made up, or biased.
Exactly.
That's just the way it is.
These are government offices doing these studies, and it's real data that they don't want. Frankly, they don't want to look at. So we know that background check system sucks, but the Democrats, they want more of the same. Now they want what they call universal background checks. So now, not only are we dealing with the flawed background system that's putting good people in danger, we want now the gun grabbers want to make sure that I can't sell you a gun. And so now they call it universal background check. I can't, if I had a stepson, let's say, I wouldn't be able to give my stepson a gun or sell a gun to him without going and having background checks done on both of us. So now let's play this scenario out.
We're going to run the numbers, right?
Let's play this out so the lefties can see this, how badly this is. So now, let's say I have hypothetical, of course. I have a stepson. I'm going to give him a gun. Now him and I both have to go to the local gun shop and have both our background checks run. I already told you the flaw rate. Right. 112,000 people per year getting denied. So now I'm putting my gun ownership at risk because I could potentially be red flagged for a stupid reason. Like I said before, my social security number could be close enough to that of a felon.
Any kind of judgment against you or anything like that.
I could mess up on the application. Right. I could make a mistake in my zip code. For any number of reasons, it could get kicked back and delayed. What does that mean about all the guns that I already own? What does that mean about my license to carry? What happens then? Let's say it was a flaw in the system. Now what? Is my license to carry now invalid? All because they created another law, universal background check, where I now have to go. I'm being forced now to go to give a gun or sell a gun to my stepson. Now I'm put at risk. You see how none of it works.
Well, it's because it doesn't work because you know and I know that it's all completely against the whole concept of personal responsibility. It goes against that constantly. It's like, well, wait a minute. What's actually going to cause the problems? Like Anthony was telling us earlier about some guy him and his brother murdered their whole family, right? And they put it up on Facebook weeks ahead of time that they were going to murder their whole family. So is there a law for that, or should we be responsible and, keep each other in check and stuff? So how is passing a law going to affect any of these bad? That's the problem, is that all the laws do is deny the liberty to the law-abiding citizens. Yeah. Every single time, that's what happens, because it never affects what's going on over here. You can't even draw a line comparing that to the things that actually happen, because those people are crazy. If you got a crazy brother, call the cops, right?
Hey, Anthony, did the guy it was two guys, right? They were going to kill their family and they announced it. Is there a law against murdering people?
They should make better murder laws.
Well, that's the point. It's already illegal to kill people, yet these two guys announced that they were going to kill their own family, and they did it. So what other law are you going to put in place?
Nothing. Well, plus they knew they were going to kill themselves too, so they didn't care. Again, This is the whole thing. It's always somebody who doesn't care. You think a guy that walks into a school with an AR-15, assault rifle, is thinking that, ooh, I'm going to get away with this. This is a good thing. Nobody's thinking that. They're already nuts. You got to deal with nutty people as nutty people.
And so the restrictions that are put in place, let me say the obvious again, because I just feel compelled to say it, because there's stupid people out there. The laws do nothing to stop these people.
Nothing.
And we know this, and we can't seem to drill it into their heads because they already know. They know that. It's not the bad guys, and we get caught up We get caught up in this whole thing where we work to try to help them see that what they're doing is restricting law-abiding citizens. We're thinking that by explaining this to the anti-gun crowd, they will say, oh, you're right. It violates the rights of good people, and we don't want to do that. The truth is, that's exactly what they want to do. They want to slow down and ultimately restrict and prevent gun purchases from law-abiding citizens. That's the goal.
Because that's
never
the only
talked
thing
about.
that can come out of it, right? Because it's not going to affect the criminals because they're criminals.
And they know that, and we tell them this all the time. So
maybe they don't know what a criminal is. I don't know. I'm going to put I'm going to put all my social media accounts, I'm going to put a definition of criminal today. Person who does not obey the law.
Because you have some
Any questions?
You have some lefties that follow your Facebook, don't you?
I do.
I know there was one guy recently. We'll call him. Let's call him one of the Ninja Turtles. Let's call him Raphael. Right?
Raphael's good. Yep.
Raphael.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite
good.
turtles.
I think a good-hearted guy, but I think just completely off into left-wing territory and not understanding just how important rights are over laws and rules and regulations.
And talk about someone who was not a rule follower. He would be one of those, Raphael, right? I mean, that he was a free thinker. He did what he wanted, you know. It was probably successful at various times of his life. You know?
And don't get me wrong, I always had a I always liked the guy.
I liked turtles from when I was a little kid.
I liked that particular Ninja Turtle. He was a good-hearted guy, and I knew him years ago. And but something, like I said, something happens to these guys, and they go this route where they're willing to give up freedom, which is what this country was founded on. They're willing to give up freedom to land on this left-wing side of society that's all about rules and regulations, enforcing legislation, and all this stuff. And I kind of think to myself, how don't you see that this is how you create a socialist or eventually a communist country? It was freedom and the ability of people to do whatever the hell they want as long as it's not hurting anybody. And be able to make your own choices and be responsible for yourself. That's what this country was founded on. But people, and we know a lot of these people, it's not just him.
Right. There's
a lot of people who have taken the Kool-Aid on the left, and they can't understand this anymore. Either they don't understand it or they do understand it, but they have to side with their buddies on the left. And I think that might have a lot to do with it.
I guess, because really, in a lot of their situations, is they're always advocating for somebody else's freedoms to be infringed, not their own.
Right.
Because they don't care. Like if they're not gun owners and don't care about guns, well, let's do all this stuff to all these gun owners. You know, it's always somebody else, which is kind of insidious as well, you know. And again, kind of a child's view of things, because we know that the whole world works because we're all interdependent on each other and we have value exchange. That's why business works. That's why all these things work. Personal responsibility. That's why traffic laws work, because we don't want to crash and ruin our cars and kill ourselves. But if you're just looking at things as presented through the media, it's all these other things, you know? So it's easy to look at those other people and think, well, we should take care of that so that doesn't happen anymore, when it's got nothing to do with you. But on the flip side of that, the biggest problem from that comes where you're one of those 12 people who's denied that gun out of 112,000, and somebody attacks you tomorrow and you don't have a way to defend yourself.
Yeah.
So your freedom is restricted so they can feel like something is going on that they think should go on.
Right.
It's all multi-layered. It's distractions, basically.
Well, that's just it. You don't want, and I wish these people on the political left would see this and really just put their politics aside and their Trump hate aside and their cultivated hatred toward Republicans. I wish they'd put it all, their media cultivated hatred toward Republicans. I wish they'd put it all aside for a minute and just look at the idea with guns in particular, that if somebody breaks into your house, wouldn't you rather have a gun than not? If somebody's coming in to kill you and kill your family, wouldn't you rather have a way of protecting yourself and your family? Doesn't that just make logical sense on the face of it?
It makes sense on the face of it to me.
But they don't. And we can talk about another person that we both know. Let's call him Derek, right? Do we know who Derek is? Derek once told me, another lefty, told me that if his house was broken, because we had this conversation, me and him, if his house was broken into, he would sit the person down and have a discussion with him.
And the other
Anthony,
the other person,
can you believe this? Somebody's breaking into your house, wanting to kill you, wanting to rob you, wanting to steal your stuff, and because you're so anti-gun, you're so anti-conservative values, traditional American values, gun ownership and all that stuff, that you actually believe in your head that you will sit the guy down and have a discussion. Well, what are you going to do? Are you going to talk about his childhood and how he got to be this whatever, I don't know, burglar, whatever he's going to do to you? You're going to actually see how this all progressed, and you're going to say, look, let's talk about this. I think we can discuss your childhood, and we can make sure that we can figure out what oh my God, no.
After they've already broken into your house.
Somebody's got a gun or a knife to my throat. I think they deserve a bullet through the head. Anthony, what do you think? Kapow, he says. But the problem is the people on the left, I don't think they're calculating this.
They're not running, and they don't run timelines. They probably can't tell the difference between if somebody decides that they're going to break into your house through the time when they've broken in, taken your stuff, and maybe shot you. They don't run that timeline. They just say, well, this person must have problems.
Yeah.
It's like the whole instinct of there's a bear, run.
Well, plus they think they're compassionate.
But they're assuming that the other person is going to be of the same mind. It's all projection, right? It's like, okay, well, I would talk about that. You don't even have a gun. Right. You're not a criminal. You're not anything like that person. Well, this is my whole argument when in the other direction as well. When people used to say stuff about Trump, you are so far from what he is in the world. How do you think that you know what he thinks? You're nothing like him. Your whole life experience has been totally different, and you think you know how he thinks about this little thing over here.
Right.
Well, I wonder how he treats his wife when he's in private. Jeez, like, come on. It's ridiculous, right? It doesn't make any sense. And again, you can never run it out and show that it creates results. That's the problem. There's no results. There's just rhetoric and motivations and assumed things about what other people are thinking, mind reading, and it's a mess out there.
Let me just summarize. We're dealing with idiots. We got to wrap it up on that note. So,
okay.
All right. Danny Wos Jr. says we got to cut it. We're out of time.
Cool.
Right,
Later.
Thanks. Thanks so much for watching The Loaded Mic on YouTube, Rumble, Simul TV, and Right America Media. You can also catch the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, whatever your favorite podcast app is, we're there. I'm Dan Wos, and the Second Amendment is not a privilege. It's your right.
Hey y'all, it's Savannah from The Savvy Truth with Right America Media. I'm just here to let all of y'all know that we are officially partnered with MyPillow. And so you know I'm telling the truth. Our discount code is RAM, capital R, capital A, capital M. So go use that code when you want to buy any of Mike Lindell's awesome sheets, awesome pillows, dog beds, towels, or whatever the heck you want to get. And our official MyPillow phone number is 800-867-0416. So please go use our code, go use our phone number, and go get some of Mike Lindell's awesome, all-American, made in America towels, sheets, dog beds, and pillows galore. So go check them out.
it is necessary to purge the establishment.
What she's suggesting that churches do, focus on...
That's not necessarily a good thing to start with.
They're stating it wasn't around when we needed the greatest generation of the 30s or 40s.
It happened before the election because there's too many Republicans that are afraid that their wrongdoings are going to...
It's unacceptable, and I'm not going to sit here, stay silent, and not call it out. I'm calling out their lies.
Rules for Thanksgiving. Who the hell is he to tell us what we're supposed to do?
Do they think that we are so stupid that we will not notice and find out